Welcome to San Diego Integral. I'm Tom Habib, and I'm a member of the leadership team. We have an exciting presentation today, an unusual one, I may say, Emerging Teal Consciousness in the Ukraine, Integral Voices and Lessons from this War. We're going to begin shortly, but I first want to mention you can find event information on our website at sandiegointegral.org, or the meetup page you likely found the link on. The advantage of joining one of these groups is you automatically are notified when a new event is added. If you ever have questions or comments about this meeting, you're welcome to contact one of the members of the leadership team through either Meetup or our Facebook page. Without further ado, why don't we introduce one of the people that really put this together, Tucker Walsh. And Kathleen will be doing the introduction.
We have Tucker very much to thank for putting the panel together and bringing this to us and helping organize all the people we have joining from the panel from Kiev. Tucker Walsh is an Emmy Award-winning documentary film director and co-founder of Constructing Consciousness Gatherings. He's currently co-creating and facilitating in-person and online gatherings, as well as consulting for transformational communities around the globe. Tucker is based in Boulder, Colorado, and recently participated in the Emerge Ukraine pilgrimage. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Such a pleasure to be here. So, yeah, I'm just settling in and noticing how much excitement I feel in my body. I had the immense pleasure and honor and truly life-changing experience to be in Ukraine a few months ago for the Emerge pilgrimage. I'm going to be dropping a bunch of links in the chat. So if you're interested to learn more about a lot of these topics, you can check out some of the links I'll drop in. The Emerge pilgrimage brought together people from Canada and the USA and Europe, and joined with our Ukrainian colleagues and friends in the integral and meta-modern communities. And we got to really firsthand experience what was happening on the ground in Ukraine, to learn from the people, from the culture, from the systems and structures that are arising in the face of war, in the face of an existential crisis. And I just got to say, it was one of the most life-changing experiences I've ever been a part of. I really felt fundamentally changed, and I felt my understanding of integral consciousness, of being a human being, shifted in a very palpable way after my time in Ukraine. We recorded a whole webinar about the Emerge pilgrimage, specifically with some of the folks who were there. And if you click on the Google Doc link I just sent, there's a bunch of resources and the call recording, so you can learn more about that experience. And before I introduce our panelists that are here and get into the topic of today, I wanted to just play 1 or 2 minutes from a video that was made, a very beautiful video that shows some of the Emerge pilgrimage, and just to get a little bit of a taste and a flavor of that experience.
We call it a pilgrimage. It's not just a simple gathering. It's not just a conference, because we believe that for all participants, it was a transformational journey. It included intense intellectual program, various cultural and spiritual experiences. Our pilgrims, our guests shared that it is a huge difference in the perception of what is happening here in Ukraine, looking from outside and being here inside the country, experiencing the life in the country, in the war, having direct communications with people living here.
designing a program, we wanted to show Kiev. We wanted to show also some places that are located in Kiev region. These places were occupied during the first months of full-scale invasion in Ukraine. We also want our friends to have theater experience in Ukraine, to show them some really lovely places, interesting places, historical places. And also we will have few very important panel discussions and presentations from some prominent Ukrainian intellectual.
I like the quote by Mark Twain, which goes like that. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the ability to act in the presence of fear. So this is actually the kind of courage that is manifested in Ukraine right now. We cannot ignore, we cannot pretend we do not experience fear. Fear is too obvious. We cannot hide from it. We cannot push it into the shadow. We live in the presence of fear, and still we need to act, because this fight is existential. And it was very important for us to share.
Okay. I will, here's the the full video if you'd like to watch it and get a better sense of the pilgrimage. And so when I came back from Ukraine, I just had this soul mission in my gut. It would like literally churn my stomach. This desire to do something, to be a part of the Ukrainian cause, of the Ukrainian mission. And part of that is my Ukrainian ancestry. Part of that is that I felt that I am forever Ukrainian after having that direct, intimate experience. And then part of it is also just recognizing that what's happening in Ukraine is not an isolated incident. There are experiences happening all over the world now and in the future that we can learn so much from our Ukrainian counterparts. There's so much wisdom and on the ground, real world, hands in the dirt, embodied wisdom that is being learned. And if we can share that with each other, I think that could have a really positive impact on our world. You know, I know a bunch of people here from Southern California, and just looking at the LA wildfires and some of the scenes right now, it doesn't look that visually different from some of the towns in Ukraine that have just been completely destroyed. And so this call is about integral consciousness, and that's what's bringing us together. But really, I think it's about how do we respond in the face of catastrophe? How do we respond when existential crises are at our door, literally and metaphorically? So I would like to introduce our panel very briefly, and let's see, I wonder if I can spotlight people. How about, it might take a bit to spotlight, so if you just wave when I say your name, and then people can know who you are, and then we can, maybe if Kathy or Eli, if you want to spotlight our panelists while I'm speaking and introducing them, that'd be awesome. So Katerina Yasko, she is a psychologist, a facilitator, community builder, and founder of INTEGRAL, which focuses on the evolution of organizations through the development of people. She's going to be offering a breakout room in a little bit on culture and psychology and relationships. Vitas Bushinas, he's a certified integral life coach and also a practitioner of integral Zen. And he's also the lucky man that is married to Katerina. And he will be hosting a breakout room on leadership and development. Valery Pecker is the co-founder of the New Civic Country, which is a civic platform which unites experts working on reforms in Ukraine. He was also a member of the National Reforms Council, and he's going to be offering a breakout room on how to end the war and ensure sustainable peace. Victoria Savastianova. Victoria, I'm sorry. I love you. You're one of my closest friends, and I still don't know how to pronounce your last name, which is, I'm working on it. So Victoria is using integral theory to help her work as a somatic practitioner and a craniosacral therapist to focus on holistic well-being. She's been working with clients that have directly experienced firsthand trauma from the war and helping them reconnect to all aspects of their being and their body. Victoria, as well as Valery, have both been posting some really beautiful essays about what life is like in Ukraine, what we can learn, those of us who aren't there in person. And then finally, Akven Nimwagan, I hope I'm saying your last name right. He's based in the Netherlands and is a co-founder of Value Match, a company that provides assessments and analysis of personal and team and organizational values. Ak wrote an essay that made its way around the integral community a couple years ago about really looking at Ukraine through a spiral dynamics lens. And he's going to be offering a breakout room on the pitfalls of green pacifism. So first, I just want to say it is an incredible honor to have all of these people here, and there's so much to say. And I hope that this conversation, what unfolds in the next hour and a half or so, is just planting seeds, and that as a global integral community, we can reach out to our brothers and sisters and find more ways for these voices and these messages and this wisdom to make its way out into the world. So without further ado, I'd just like to introduce or hand it over to Valery. He's going to give a short, maybe 15-minute presentation, just overviewing Ukraine through an integral lens, what's happening with the war, and just to give a top-line overview. Valery.
Hopefully you see now my slides. So my name is Valery Pecker. Thank you very much for being with us. I would like to very briefly offer a vision of how integral view could provide us with a vision how to end the war and ensure sustainable peace. So let's start asking a question. Why the second most powerful army in the world was unable to win? How it is possible? The answer is because a war is waged not only by armies, but also by societies. And not the Ukrainian army, which is smaller and weaker, opposes Russian army, second most powerful in the world, but Ukrainian society. So our vision of the war is could be very flat. Soldiers from one army are killing soldiers from another army and vice versa. But if we should use the integral approach, we should see much more. We should see a multi-dimensional structure. That this flat view is just one of quadrants, but we could see also political systems and economics and propaganda and resources and need for resources and power struggle and so on. And we can see here thinking, values, and spirituality of every person, every man and woman on the front line and in the rear, and also culture, languages, religions, and imagined communities which bring shared dreams. If you believe that societies evolve like human thinking evolve, that we can see some waves, some breakthroughs, some waves rolling over each other, which from time to time brings something new wave, new ideas, new paradigm, new values, new institutions to our life. And indeed, this wave picture is very correct. And the next one, which I will use, is not so correct, but it is easier to understand. So that's the unfolded map of societal development. And this map, we can see the major reason for this war. Ukraine and Russia are going in different direction. So I believe you know these colors offered by some integral researchers, but what we can see here, why they are going in different directions, what these directions mean, what these colorful bubbles mean. So Ukraine and Russia were on the practically same level of economic, mental, societal, political, cultural development, living social union in 1991. There were very hard 90s with the social trauma, and two societies tried to cure social trauma by going different directions. Ukraine by going forward to modernization, and Russia to going backward to resentment and revenge. Why this is so? Because of different political cultures. And when these political cultures became so different, was it in 1991? Was it in 1917? Or earlier? We believe it was so early as 1169, where political cultures goes different ways in these two lands. And what does it mean, these color bulbs? So a very traditional blue empires, colonies, extractive economy, what Nobel Award winners of this year, Gemoglu and Robinson called extractive systems, extractive economic and political systems, patron-client politics. This is traditional feudalism, but this is also Soviet Union. This is also oligarch system. This is a sustainable multi-level social pyramid of privileges and rent seekers. This is the post-Soviet way, which people try to evolve from, but different direction. Ukraine going to modernity, to a national state, to inclusive economy, to modern values, critical thinking, national identity, accountable governance, and democracy. And Russia, unfortunately, backward to rule by force, highly extractive economy, and highly centralized captured state, with some political researchers called a mafia state. And it is important that traditional paternalistic values of care, order, and security were replaced by criminal values of survival on the bottom and domination on the top. This is like a big jail. A big jail invaded Ukraine. And these jail criminal values were installed in Russia for 20 years since Putin came into power through movies, television, songs, books, and so on and so on. So from this point of view, we can see that countries are going different ways. So Ukraine is fighting now for its future to be a modern country, which it is not yet, but would like to be. And Russia is fighting for its past to be the world's greatest empire, which it was once, but could not go back to this point, because this point, the position of second country in the world, which together with the United States can decide the way of humankind, is already taken by China. So we are going different ways, and the essence of the war is that Ukraine is fighting for its future and Russia fighting for its past, for the revenge and restoration of empire, and the seat in the club of great powers, which is already busy. And strategists know that it is possible to win a war for the future. It is possible to lose the war for the future, but it is not possible to win a war for the past. It is in the war for the past, you can only lose. For Ukraine, it is an independence war, anti-colonial, anti-imperial, and two different societies are waging a war. A Russian, very hierarchical and centralized society governed by an omnipotent system based on fear and subservience. This is a traditional Russian state, and modern network society of free citizens of Ukraine, accustomed to the values of freedom, dignity, self-sufficiency, and mutual assistance. Not all Ukrainian society is like that, but a very critical mass of that, a very critical part of that. So that is why the Russian army is fighting the whole Ukrainian society and could not overcome the society. It could overcome the army, but not the society. And also we can mention that Russian authoritarianism is not so good solution for waging a modern war, because it allows, indeed allows to quickly gather their vast resources, but produces decisions of extremely low quality based on not adequate information and management culture, which cultivates lies, fear, and personal loyalty. This is today Russian authoritarianism. So we need also an integral view on the war. Indeed, many people who share postmodern values, green values in the modern world, they are absolutely right saying that both our parties need a dialogue, that ceasefire should stop the war, that there is a room for compromise. In any conflict, both parties are guilty, that truth is not well known. This is true, but we should not be locked on the green level, because beneath the green level, there is a scientific, factual, orange level of modern fact society and modern fact-based thinking, which says there is truth, there are facts which can be established, and when we know the truth, the opposite is lie. There is no symmetry between rapist and victim. This is totally asymmetrical thing. So who is guilty? Aggressor is always guilty. And beneath this orange, this is a very traditional blue values, which say always there is a clear difference between good and evil. And beneath that is even red values, which says who exchange freedom for security loses both security and freedom. And even deeper, there is the basic human level of purple magic conscience, which says whoever comes to kill you, kill him first, and whoever says he is going to kill you right now, believe him. That means that we postmodern people we green postmodern people have a red challenge, which could be illustrated by this meeting of an elephant and a tank. Red doesn't think about long-term consequences. Red considers politeness as weakness. Red never remembers lessons of the past, never negotiates, and understands only immediate response. And we see that modern green-orange world totally failed to answer this red challenge. Our green failure means that we understand war as a conflict of two evil, where good people suffer on both sides of the front line. And please reconcile, please sign any kind of agreement to stop the war. Green meme couldn't see a war where one party is an innocent victim or fighting for life, for freedom, for independence, for families, for children. And war isn't over when UTV stops to show it. So green is lost in the face of red aggression, just advocating for peace and harmony, and answering with peace mantra and Stockholm syndrome and the habit of powerlessness, and because green postmodern society is also post-heroic. We need heroes. So we need to go from green failure to green flourishing. And integral theory and practice allows us to do this. So how to respond to go from unhealthy green, which is locked in the green level, to healthy green, which combines everything. We could leave green to the deepest of the heart, but include red, strength and resoluteness, and our blue moral compass, and our orange rationality, fact-based life and creativeness. So this healthy green is possible. It is resilient, it is decentralized, it is live, it is anti-fragile in terms of Nassim Taleb, and we can see some examples in Ukraine now. And we need red, but we need not unhealthy red of aggression and violence, but healthy red, because red could serve life and resonate with us. We need healthy red because we still have unhealthy red. We need healthy red of heroism to oppose. And so this green flourishing can show us some things which could be seen in Ukraine, like spontaneous horizontal networks, crowdfunding, crowdsourcing in enormous scales, open code principles, and like Wikipedia cooperation, no bosses, no hierarchies, collective leadership, open access, and empathy to all sentient beings. So sometimes Putin say, where is the center of a volunteer movement in Ukraine? We have to destroy it, but don't center in green volunteer movement. Everybody, every man and woman in volunteer movement is a center, himself or herself. So, and the war is indeed integral. So we see the war in upper right quadrant as a fighting, but it was born in the quadrant of propaganda and political system and struggle for power. And forgiveness, which is offered, is in the upper left. It is not enough. We have to cure all quadrants. We have to heal all quadrants here. So, finishing my story, given the multi-dimensional nature of the war, how to stop the war and how to ensure a sustainable peace. What means sustainable peace? Not a truce for 1 year, not a short freezing of the conflict, but a sustainable peace with the means for generation, and how to prevent next war. And who is guilty? Ironically, we know the man who is guilty. This is Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, who in his philosophy made a difference between historical and non-historical nations and put the basis for imperialist and colonialist thinking. So historical nations have more rights and non-historical nations have no rights. And voice of non-historical, post-colonial and colonial societies is not heard. So how to stop the war? Indeed, many people say American and European people and states should give more weapon and more money to Ukraine. This is true, but this is not the whole truth. The main issue is not weapons. The main issue is not money. The main issue is the consent to defeat the nation which is historical by non-historical. Because so many people think historical nations could be defeated. Who will manage those non-historical nations? I will show them now. Who sets of historical nations could be confiscated, and they couldn't be expelled from the UN Security Council, and they could be embargoed, and their leaders couldn't be arrested, and historical nation had the right for a zone of interest, and Ukraine is non-historical. That means that Ukraine should surrender. Who will do this? Who will make sustainable peace in Russia? Only people living in Russia can do this. Neither Ukrainians, nor Americans, nor Europeans can do this. Only people in Russia. But how they can do this? And here we can remember that Russia is not Russian. Russia is not only for Russian people. According to official data, some 28% of the population are not Russians, but the real figure is greater, more than 40%. So and there are dozens of nations living in Russian so-called federation, which is an empire now, with a long history of genocides, deportation, Russification, cultural oppression, deprivation of lands, violation of human rights, and so on. So, and when Ukraine and Estonia and Lithuania and Georgia and Armenia became free in 1991, all those nations also wanted to be free, but Moscow immediately started war in Chechnya, showing them that they could not be free. So this decolonization scenario means that there are no historical nation and non-historical nation, that all people could be free, not only in Africa, not only in Asia, not only in Middle East, not only in Latin America, but also in Northern Asia. And this prevents bad scenarios which we can foresee. This decolonization or refederalization, let's say, make Russia a federation back, prevents nuclear risks, humanitarian catastrophes, Chinese risks, and so on. And now for America, Trump wants to establish base in Greenland, not Greenland, but the Republic of Sakha, a big blue in this on the right side of that. Is the key to American security in 21st century and to American opposition with China. So this is our view of sustainable peace. Stop dividing nations to historical and non-historical, and historical should win and non-historical should also surrender. Now we have contours of new international security system are being outlined, and it is our task to do this, because there are no other adult people in the room. That is why this is our duty. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Valery. Oh.
So Tucker, now I am.
Oh, you're muted, but we're gonna spotlight the panelist here once we get everyone up. Let's see. Add spotlight. Add spotlight. Add spotlight. Great. Is there one more we're missing? So thank you so much for that amazing overview of what's happening in Ukraine through an integral lens. And before we dive more into the story of what's happening and the structures and the systems and the different perspectives we can take, I just wanted to ask, how are you all doing just on a human level? How are your hearts? What's happening right now in Ukraine and your lives? Yeah, we'll start there.
Mine is difficult. Mine is difficult because I'm Ukrainian by choice, and I got my start at the House of Ukraine in San Diego, just because if you don't protest evil, you're accomplice to it. And I knew Ukrainians were walking through hell. And then since then, we morphed into a group called the Shield of Freedom And we're kind of like the last presenter said, we believe that supplying the front lines and getting victory is really the only way to bring lasting peace.
Hey, Craig.
More
Craig.
aspects to it, but yeah.
Craig, I apologize if I was confusing. We're just gonna have the 5 panelists up that are spotlighted speak, and then we're gonna do breakout rooms, and then after the breakout rooms, we're gonna have at least half an hour, 40 minutes to really bring in a full group discussion, and then there'll be an afterflow call as well, so there'll be even more time for all of us to jump in.
Oh, sorry, yeah, I missed that.
No worries.
I just want to say, reflecting on how we are. Today we had only one air raid in Kiev, very early in the morning, and only for 42 minutes. So that's a rare occasion, a rare day that it's only. Maybe we'll have some more during this call. We'll see. But I assure you, nothing will change. You will not notice anything from the Ukrainian participants on the screen. So generally we are doing fine. This is like a meme. Maybe you have seen a huge installation in the Burning Man festival made by Ukrainians, which was I'm fine, built from the damaged road signs from Ukraine, managed by war, I mean, damaged by war.
Vitas, let me correct you on that just a little bit. We have an alarm here in my region, not in Kiev, but in Kiev region. So it's
okay,
probably
sorry. I was speaking from the privileged Kiev city.
Yeah. Yeah, you know that last night we had like 7, I think, alarms in my region only. I don't know how many there was in Kiev, but it was pretty loud.
I can jump in with this. Yesterday, during the day, we had more, and our youngest son is 11, and the school is very nice. They're informing the parents immediately after children go to the shelter. So basically it takes not more than 1 minute from the beginning of the air raid alarm till we get the message in our parents group that no worries, kids are in the shelter. So yeah, safety-wise, there are a little bit of challenge. And at the same time, we're living through the most, I believe, meaningful period in our life. From the perspective of the absence of any existential kind of inner inquiries and challenges, and from the perspective of the social impact that we can create, like how meaningfully we can use our time, it's obviously the best time in life. And sometimes I'm humbled to say this. It may seem quite awkward that you can feel basically generally happy even under the drones and bombs. Just recently we had the readings of Dante's Divine Comedy. We did a group reading in our place with Vitas, and we were reading Paradise, the last part of the Divine Comedy, and we had drones flying over our roof. So it was a little bit surrealistic, and at the same time quite soul nurturing in a way, because when you experience the fragility of life, having this embodied experience, then there is this clarity with which you can act, and whatever you produce and create from this inner clarity, it is usually quite vibrant, and it creates quite broad and extensive effect. At least that's what we're observing. There is a lot of synchronicity, and there are a lot of serendipities in our field, in the place we live in. Thank you.
Yeah, Katerina, what you're saying, I was just gonna briefly share, one of the most impactful things for me as an artist, as a filmmaker, is seeing how Ukraine was taking these, like a bombed bridge or all these cars that were completely shelled and mortared, and they were transforming them into public art installations that were both sending a powerful message and also creating beauty simultaneously. And if that's not integral consciousness to me, I don't know what is. Victoria, I interrupted you.
I wanted to agree with Katerina because I feel that these almost 3 years are kind of, I call it no bullshit time, when everything that is not true just falls, like sheds from your skin, and you stay with your own truth. And also, I feel that this exhaustion that we are experiencing, it might also contribute to the altered states of mind, and bring up new levels of, I don't know, spirituality, some new experiences. You don't need any chemicals from that, actually. And we also kind of are forced into expansion of the consciousness so that we can hold all the polarities, because it's such a contrast. Well, Tucker, you experienced that, you touched that at least a little, you know how it feels. So it's at the same time, it's clarity, truth, exhaustion. We're horrified. Well, I will be speaking for myself. We're deeply sad and grieving, and we find somehow we find moments to be happy and connected. It's amazing how everything is intertwined.
So we have this call, we have folks from all over the world. I'm amazed when so many different countries were named, and all of you from Ukraine, and Ak, you're bringing in an important European perspective as well. What's most important to discuss? What's the message that is important to share, that is important to be heard? How can we be of service to you right now in this moment?
If I may, there is something that is bubbling in me, especially after yesterday I read this Anne Applebaum's, the famous historian, wrote an article which is published on The Atlantic about the new Rasputins, and I highly recommend it. And I imagine Tucker may be willing to share it in the chat, because yesterday we exchanged in our Emerge group
Sorry, I
it.
can share it, Tucker, for you not to search.
Thank you. So something what I would like to share, and I believe this is like not the most important thing, but something that is very juicy for me. I think that we have to be extremely careful about those ways how people practice so-called spirituality. And we hear a lot, and we know about ourselves that so many people are going to the retreats all over, ayahuasca retreats in Costa Rica or in Peru, meditation retreats on Goa or on Bali, other places. And something we would like to convey is that if you would like to really keep your mind sane and be in touch with reality and practice practical spirituality, you might consider wishing to come to Ukraine. And that might bring more transcendental states and more experience of true integration than anything practiced in very comfortable, peaceful, safe conditions. I know people heal through belonging. I believe that what is happening now in Ukraine is quite unique in terms of how the society develops and the level of connectedness and the social texture, social fabrics that we are creating here is something that the world can also experience and learn from. So my message, for example, is for now is whenever you decide and whenever you have spare energy, resources to go for self-exploration, maybe Ukraine could be a good place to come and see how your body reacts. And I'm so glad and touched that there are so many participants of our Emerge Ukraine pilgrimage on this call. So I would just like to stop and say, dear friends, even if you won't be speaking today, please write some of your impressions in the chat. Please share them with other participants so that it won't be us as hosts, but you as guests who are sharing what you've seen, heard, and felt here. Thank you.
Can I add something to that? So I was also very happy to see, Valerie, that you've added unhealthy green to your presentation, at least from an earlier one I've seen. I think specifically the message to the integral or community or Sparlodemics community or whatever we name it is to start observing how much what is happening in those communities is self-centered, is about our own well-being, is about our own harmony. And I think if one thing that that Katrina and others are pointing to is that, you know, the reality of life out there is very different. And I think a lot of people are using or misusing spirituality, integral, Sparlodemics, or whatever, to dissociate from the reality of this world. And that reality is uncomfortable. And that's obviously the reason why we use all these methods to get away from that. But to me, integral, or being busy with Sparlodemics, or whatever name that you give to it, is about connecting to the reality of life. It's not about dissociating from it. It's about fully understanding what's happening in this world, fully being present to it, and being prepared to act on that. And in this transition to what we could also call it second-tier thinking, or teal thinking, or yellow thinking, we have to start dealing with the discomfort that we feel about things happening in the world. And I think, Valerie, it was the quote you had from, being fearless is not the absence of fear, right? So we have to be present to that. It's happening. And to me, I mean, living in Europe, in a country that was occupied during the Second World War, with two parents that were heavily traumatized by that. For me, when I hear the stories of my friends in Ukraine, it touches upon a lot of stuff from my past, which often is very uncomfortable. But that this is the reality, this is the life that we live. This is just a few days ago, I was having a conversation on Facebook with somebody from Australia who were sort of saying, oh, well, this is all about, two bad actors, it's about America fighting and Russia fighting. It's nothing to do with Ukraine and all that. And it's a very easy way to disassociate from the reality by making things simple. And especially when the bad actors are outside yourself, or far away, where you can sort of blame all the bad governments in the world, and you don't have to take any responsibility for that. But the reality is so much more complex, and that's one of the things that I've learned so much in the last few years, being in contact with the people that you see here on the screen and others from Ukraine, to really understand that if we want to move forward in complex thinking, we have to be in contact with every layer that is out there. We have to, to develop Teal consciousness, as as far as you can do that consciously. It's about understanding each of these layers and also being in contact with the purple and the red out there in the world and not dissociating from that.
Victoria, I was curious just to, if you'd be open to following up on that. You work specifically with the body, with literally not disassociating and coming back into our somatic aliveness in the face of death. What is that like? What has that taught you personally, and what are you learning in the work you're doing with your clients?
Yeah, thank you, Tucker. You read my mind, because I was going to continue what Auke said. Auke actually helped me last summer to really be present with what was happening, because July was everything, had everything in it. It was the worst missile attacks, power outages, and the heat, and all together it created such a pressure that even having all those instruments, embodiment, mindfulness, and everything, it was very hard for me to stay present. And I would say that it must be the hardest spiritual practice for me, out of all practices of my life, to stay present with everything that's happening and trying not to dissociate. I do notice that sometimes I feel numb reading the news, because it just gets too much. At some point, when you have everyday tragedy, it does numb the emotional reaction. But staying in the body actually helps a lot, because I can see through my clients, for example, one of the factors of this war is that it's not ending. I mean, when you have something happening, when something shocking is happening, usually it lasts, then it ends, and then you can work with trauma or with PTSD or whatever stays, right? But here, the war doesn't end, and we don't know when it ends. So I believe that staying in the body is maybe one of the most important things that would help us survive this war as long as it goes. Because I can see from my clients that people who stay dissociated for a year, for 2 years, they start getting symptoms. They start getting, their bodies start falling apart, because body cannot contain so much pressure and stay in a chronic stress for years. We're not designed for that. So that's what I'm trying to do in my craniosacral and embodiment practices. But my personal practice is to stay sane myself. I feel that it's like first mission for everyone. The most important, try to stay sane yourself, like put mask first on yourself, and then try to save others. And that would be an adult, mature, responsible thing to do right now. Because when the war is over, and I believe that it will be, we need to be, again, present in order to continue with the consequences. Sorry for such a long speech, but it's my favorite topic.
Thank you, Victoria. So speaking of when the war will end, how can the people that are listening from America, from other countries, what is a integral perspective on the war in Ukraine that we can try on, that we can be in relationship with, and then potentially connect with our elected leaders, with our neighbors, with people, and help to spread more of an integral, embodied perspective taking on what's happening in Ukraine. I think a lot of people in America, especially, and even parts of myself, are like, well, this is a thing happening in Europe between Ukraine and Russia. America has its own challenges that are happening right now. Maybe we should just put the mask on, first, and kind of ignore what's happening over there. It's somewhere else with somebody else. So what is a more integral way that people who are not Ukrainian can be in relationship with the war?
I just want to make one comment and then leave it to the others to continue. The same fight that's going on in Ukraine is going on in the US. It's a fight, you know, Valerie showed how Ukraine chose to go forward in development, and Russia has regressed in development. In the US, it's happening at the same thing is happening. You've had a regression in values in the last elections. The same in the Netherlands, where we have a populist, red values-driven leader now. So the fight is everywhere, and it's the same. And it's between freedom and democracy and autocracy. And it may sound 1950s, or may sound old-fashioned to you, but I think that it's time that we realize that that's what's really happening. And of course, I totally oversimplify world politics that way, but that's the connection that I think you Americans should feel with what's happening.
I would like to say a few words, and then I would really like to encourage Vitas and Valeri to follow through. So speaking about the mask first, I would like to emphasize that Victoria was speaking about putting the mask on yourself, but actually she is the one who is so much tuned into other people and community. So please remember that when you're thinking about putting a mask on you first, still we get true healing when we help others. So don't go into solitude. Don't be lonely with your thoughts or your whatever existential crisis. It might be also expression of this mean green, as Auke says. There is a lot of narcissism in the Western world that we are observing, being very well connected to the world, actually. And we always emphasize that if you want to heal, just go into helping others. That's the best means. And something I want to acknowledge and express our deepest gratitude for is the way our pilgrims who came in September acted upon their return to their communities. Mary Ann has written tones of poetry, and she's sharing it in those boards of the business and civic organizations she's part of. Jeff has written a beautiful address to congressmen and the representatives of the Senate, and others picked it up, and Tucker also shared it with his congressmen. And these were the pleas for support for Ukraine. Julie went to her religious community and shared about her trip to Ukraine, and also fundraised quite a lot of money for the needs of local humanitarian mission. So there are so many ways how to be connected and to support, but there's something that we have always been saying. Do not donate unless you feel a hard connection to something. It's great when you can come, experience, and then choose what your soul wants to support, what could be the continuation of your values, so that your resources, your energy will continue to support your values and your mindset. Over to you, Vitas and Valeri.
Yeah, so let me pick up from here. So Tucker, I'm not sure I will address the question that the very broad question that you presented, but just continuing on the thought from Katya, that there is one very sad aspect which we sometimes hear from quite mature and hopefully conscious people from the US and Canada including people from integral communities, or for example, from some quite well-known spiritual communities in America, who generally the message goes like that: we should just withdraw, we should stop participating in all the wars, we should just withdraw, and that will make the lives of those other people better. And that is, of course, based on very, very confused, difficult, and traumatized experience of U.S. involvement in Iraq and Afghanistan, which is understandable. But just withdrawing is not really solving the problem, because we in Ukraine feel like we are part of the same Western kind of civilization, and we really want help and protection. Otherwise, we will not survive. So, again, coming to this notion of looking reality as it is, kind of, or seeing reality as it is, it's so important that we are seeing that my field of professional activity is leadership development, and I always look at the behavior and thinking of leaders. What I see, that a lot of leaders are now following the path of the recent very famous movie, Don't Look Up. They're just not looking at the reality as it is, since it's too uncomfortable. So I don't think the path, the whole kind of solution is there, but the path to the solution is literally looking truth in the eyes and looking reality in the eyes as it is. And staying connected, not reducing the reality to the level of our understanding or our comfort. So, Valeria, I would really like you to continue.
Thank you, Vitas. I think I said already a lot, but very briefly, we in Ukraine are accustomed to live in a place which is insecure and a little bit uncomfortable for years. But it looks like the whole planet is now not so secure and not so comfortable. So you cannot escape it. Since you cannot escape it, you should embrace it and think how to prevent bad scenarios and how to reach good scenarios. Because it looks like unstopped Russian leadership will continue to enter Poland and Baltic countries, and that means that the European and American blood will spill, and China will go to Arctic, and Arctic will become a new battlefield with the Chinese missiles targeted on the United States and Canada, and Greenland is not an answer. You cannot sit on the one continent and be secure from another continent if you have intercontinental ballistics. We know in Kiev what ballistics means. That means that not like drones. It's not like drones. It's not like cruise missiles. Drones are very slow. Cruise missiles are very slow. Ballistics means that you have no choice and you have no time. And living in Kharkiv means that living in Kiev means that there is 10, 15, 20 minutes between sirenas and explosion. Living in Kharkiv means that you have half a minute between sirenas and explosion. So you have no choice. You cannot go. You cannot go to shelter. Simply not enough time. So now, please think not about security and peace in Ukraine. I think we should now speak about security and peace in America and Europe, because the whole world is now under threat. And if we should consider this an integral model, we should find several answers. So values, personal values is an answer. We could stick to the value of freedom. We could stick to the values of dignity. And culture is an answer. Art is an answer. Culture is an answer. A rejection of colonialism as a cultural feature is an answer. We in Ukraine know that it is not. You are not obliged to have black skin to be enslaved. People could have the same color of skin and be slaves, like slaves of another kind of skin. And last but not least, maybe the most important, the upper right, which is institutions. So some political leaders in America would like to break institutions now to make, they think it will make people more free. Maybe they will make them free, but not the people. Some people in Europe would like to break institutions. We know in Ukraine how to live with weak institutions because we are a post-genocidal, post-colonial, post-imperial country, but we try to build them. And for us, America and Europe are samples of how to have very good institutions, but now institutions could be destroyed. So if Americans will protect their institutions, I think it would be enough to protect the world and from the world crisis. And this is exactly what Victoria said when you have to put a mask on yourself first. So think about your community, your county, your neighborhood to live in peace, and then think about other countries and neighborhoods, about Ukraine, about Baltic countries under the threat of Russian invasion right now, about Poland, about Scandinavia, about Russian tankers, very, very old-fashioned tankers with a lot of troubles, which go through Baltic Sea, threatening ecology of the whole Northern Europe, and also the Arctic. Arctic is very close to Canada. Canada is very close to America, and so on. So we are living in the world which is too small for it. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move into breakout rooms, and real quick, I just wanted to add one point around Valeria. When you were speaking, it's what I was hearing is almost like it's an all quadrants war that Russia is fighting in Ukraine, and one of the most interesting things for me about being in Ukraine was the culture war aspect, the lower left quadrant. And this is a literal concrete culture war of bombing museums and destroying the Ukrainian language. And so when earlier in the discussion, someone was saying that the word Kyiv is being spelt in the Ukrainian language. Victoria was saying recently that she's learned how to speak in her own Ukrainian tongue. And these are acts of rebellion. This is a way of fighting the war. Putting on a play that is celebrating Ukrainian history is a way of battling the war and winning the war. So yeah, just another way to conceptualize how integral thinking can inform response to conflict and occupation. So we're going to go into breakout rooms. There'll be one of our panelists in each of the rooms. This is a free-flowing experience, and so you can dip in and dip out and move between different rooms. The panelists will each share a little bit about their topic, and then there'll be time to engage with them on it. We're going to go for about 20 minutes. It's not a lot of time, but and then we're going to come back and open it up into a full group discussion for the remaining of the hour. So again, Ak is going to speak on the limitations of green and pacifism, Valery on how to win the war, Victoria on life in Ukraine and some of the different spiritual experiences and that she's been having and embodiment. Katerina is going to be speaking on relationship and culture and psychology, and Vitas on leadership development.
So, how can I be of service to you?
I don't know, but I just want to share that you expressed that just not avoiding the fear and the horrendous situation in Ukraine, that it gave you a lot of spiritual experience, so to speak. As I understand, you felt closer to each other and into each other by this experience and just not run away from it, so to speak. That is what I understood. And I am working in the neighborhoods, bottom up, trying to make the voice of the just simple citizens heard by the government, and working with the government to make the people, the voice of the people heard. And I have a similar experience that when you just don't uh, run away from the pain and the anger and the experience of being trampled on, that you just fall closer into each other and have it is like having a more a clear destiny or something. It's empowering to have this kind of experience. And yeah, well, that's what I wanted to share. And I think it's the same everywhere, not only in Ukraine, but that is what it's going happening in this world at the moment.
Thank you, Samadhi. Yeah, I believe we're more or less speaking about the same thing. I think there are more layers to it. But generally, we are social beings. And
Right.
there are many ways about how to grow above ourselves. And sometimes we do not need special positions for that. Our days and years of meditation, they might be helpful, but life emerges in different ways and calls for different expressions of spirituality. If we touch spirituality, which is not the key topic here, I do not consider myself as someone who knows much about it, but I believe that you can grow and be in peace with yourself and your circles of care with just quite a courageous response to whatever emerges. And when you go into suffering and pain with the will, having some inner resources to be of help, it nourishes your soul. Mm-hmm.
This was just such a big lesson for me in the pilgrimage. And what we had a little moment to Katya and me when in the breakout earlier, and I said my decision-making process for coming to this group was I'm going to go to the group where I'm most likely to cry. And I just like, to me, it represents, there's something about how I come into relationship to Ukraine through your heart, and which is very powerful. When we first met, when I said hello, my name's Jeff, blah blah blah, at that dinner. Yeah, I don't remember what you said, but you kind of like you kind of grabbed me by the shoulders and in a way, and said like be here and be real. It's like it was real relationship right from the start, and I feel like this is so important. And your call to come to Ukraine, come see it. It's actual, like, not tourism. It's being in relationship and intimacy. And I know the last thing I'll just say is I know, like, there's been, after the pilgrimage, there's been so many intimate, real emotional conversations that I've had that all of you have not been witness to, but that we've all been involved in through that relationship. So I just feel like the actual act of being here and feeling each other and connecting and coming into relationship, not just thinking about, but being with each other and for each other is so important, and also such a gift from this occasion.
I'm so touched. You're saying it now, Jeff. And something that your comment just reminded me is a meeting that we had before the pilgrimage with the relatives of the pilgrims which was initiated by us for Tucker's mom, because she was concerned, as any other mom. I believe I would be concerned as well if I were coming from a different country. And we decided, okay, maybe moms also needs buddies, because here we had buddy for each pilgrim, Ukrainian buddy, so that you can call if you have a air raid siren and you don't know what to do. Although everything was clear and we had all the protocols at place, however, we had buddies for each, and we thought, okay, so buddies for each pilgrim is not enough. We also need buddies for their relatives who are anxious. So we had this meeting, and it was very touching. And Dana, Tucker's mom, asked my mom, how is it? And basically she asked for advice how to deal with her own emotional turbulence, given that Tucker is going to Ukraine, which is an unsafe place. And my mom said the following thing. She said, and I was very impressed by the way that she said it. She said, you can be concerned about the life and physical safety of your child, which is very understandable. But you can also be concerned about his or her life experiences that might upgrade his understanding of life. And it's not very common in your world that in world in general, that your child might observe the expression of true virtues. And this is not easy to organize such a setup. And in Ukraine, it comes naturally. So you might be afraid for physical safety, or you might be happy that your child will experience something very special that might influence his life and his future, and might nourish his consciousness forever. So, yeah, you're right, Jeff. We were coming from this place of building relationships, not just organizing war tourism in Ukraine.
I see where you got your truth telling.
And then your mom made some homemade jam that I got to bring back to my mom, and we get to literally eat a taste of Ukraine and have that embodied experience as well, which is so beautiful.
Maybe there is something you would be willing to know about our life. There was a theater experience, Jeff. My topic is culture, so maybe I let you speak about culture in Ukraine. We had a beautiful experience of bringing our pilgrims to one of the performances that were created during the war, and this is how we save culture. Because many museums of the Ukrainian artists and poets are destroyed by Russia. So it's very conscious destruction of concrete objects. And one of the museums of a Ukrainian artist, Polina Rayko, was destroyed by the dam that was exploded by the Russians in the Kakhovka region in Kherson. So we will never see the place again, but Ukrainian theater directors are working on creating performances, so to save the stories and to convey it through the experiences. And our pilgrims were part of this experience, and we were very, very concerned that they won't get the meaning because they are not enculturated into the Ukrainian language and a local context. And then what happened, Jeff, please share.
Oh, that was just a beautiful, beautiful amazing, occasion, and but we all got to marry a young Ukrainian woman.
That
Yeah,
was part of the performance, yes.
that was part of the performance. But
Yeah, you have to explain that one a little more.
well, there was a scene in the middle of it where one of them was getting married, and I think the first one to come up was maybe Tucker got pulled up, or I can't remember who got pulled up as they took the young handsome one first, but and then eventually everyone was in a bridal gown, and we all got pulled up on the stage and joined our Ukrainian wife, so and got pictures taken of it. It's there was this one thing that like that I was really struck by going to Kyiv, is just, I mean, this is in part like it's a kind of I think, having grown up in the Cold War period here, there's so much, in a way, kind of internalization of all of these images of the Eastern and Western, the Soviet Union, the West. And there's, like, I know when I first kind of visited Eastern Europe, when we went to Hungary a few years ago, like I kind of landed in Hungary and realized, like, oh, this is not in black and white, like it's a full three-dimensional, rich, beautiful place. And it was so beautiful to, like, part of that experience is like is in taking in what a deep and rich, unbelievably rich history and culture that's present in Ukraine. It's I so appreciate that so much of our time was spent encountering that and beginning to learn a little bit of the history. And I was also, this topic reminded me, I haven't listened to the whole thing, but Zelensky recently did a podcast with Lex Friedman. I don't know if you're aware of that or know who Lex Friedman is. But I totally understand his background, but he speaks Russian. I think he has Ukrainian and Russian ancestry, Lex Friedman. And a big part of that was, working out the language. Lex Friedman, who I think had a time living or growing up in Ukraine, didn't know Ukrainian, and Zelensky saying, Lex saying, can we talk in Russian? And Zelensky saying, no, you can speak to me in Russian, but I will not use that language. And so it's a very powerful, like, just setup to that conversation, which to me was a kind of microcosm of how much in this conflict, in the war, and the response to the war is a kind of this courageous defense and embodiment of the culture. Does that sound right to you, Katya?
Yeah, and also how through culture we can turn post-traumatic stress disorder into growth through reconnecting with culture, through reconnecting with identity, like your national identity. I know you do not need to protect it. So for you, it's like transparent. Why would you protect your national identity? For us, this is not by default. So your identity becomes a huge source of inner resources, of the energy, of strength. And now we have a boom of in the field of creative initiatives, museums, of modern art, performances, theater, visual arts. Eros and Thanatos, they come together. So where there is death and devastations, there is also love, and there, like, libido just explodes with creativity. That's why I'm saying very honestly that I'm experiencing the most meaningful period in my life. I have choice. I speak 5 languages. I can go to any country, Switzerland, Norway, Great Britain offer wonderful subsidies. Like they create very solid conditions for Ukrainians to stay. And I spent 16 months abroad after the full-scale invasion, and we came back with our kids. Just because the quality of life that we're experiencing here is absolutely uncomparable. Yes, Karen.
Thank you all so much. I did not know until just now, when I heard you and Jeff speaking, that the Russian artillery were targeting, in addition to hospitals and schools and other civilian targets, I did not know until now that they were also targeting Ukrainian cultural monuments, museums. This is deliberate cultural genocide. It hurts. I'm going to be very vulnerable now and say I've done a lot of meditating. And at a certain point, I didn't ask for it, but I started remembering past lives. And in one past life, I was in a situation of cultural genocide. It was in the 13th century, and so on and so on. But I feel this. And Jeff, you said you picked the group where you thought you were the most likely to cry. I didn't think I was going to cry, but I am. It hurts. As a citizen of the United States, what you are going through in Ukraine, it hurts every day. And it hurts that my country will not help you more. I understand the political reasons why it's not possible. Even when the leaders have the best will in a democracy, if you're going to go into an external war, you have to have the majority of the population with you, and we're not there yet. And it hurts me every day. And I think that's mostly what I signed on to say. And just thank you. I sit with you. I feel with you. I do what I can. My heart is with you. That's my message. Thank you.
Tucker, do we need to go back to the main room?
Yeah, I extended it a little bit by just saying don't, because we a lot of us want to have conversations longer. So I was thinking just like 3 more minutes and then closing back to the main room.
Right.
So at what for Pacific Coast time is 9:40.
Yes, thank you for doing it, Daniel.
Thank you so much for being here and for sharing. For somebody who hasn't been in Ukraine, I wonder if you could speak a little more about what you described as circles of support and how you are providing your presence and your sort of your self-regulation as an asset or a resource to your community, certainly to your family, but more to your surrounding community and allies and friends. How are you able to manifest circles of support in ways that feel most meaningful?
Thank you. So first of all, I'd like to mention that Ukrainian society is very well self-organized. And the full-scale invasion is not the first experience for us to get composed and focused, because the reality is that the war started in 2014. So since then we have quite solid social structures and circles of support. Of course, there are a lot of professionals, because huge wave of capacity building since the start of the war in the 14th took place in Ukraine, and I was part as a professional, as a psychologist. I was part of this wave. So a lot of people from all over the world, trainers, consultants, teachers came to Ukraine from the 14th till the 22. And we have the full army of facilitators, conflict mediators, psychologists, trauma therapists, and embodiment practitioners, even people who didn't have this professional orientation before. Many has got second education out of the need, of course. More to that, we invent different interesting things. For example, we have group readings where we get together. This is one of the Nordic practices coming from the Nordic countries, which is called the learning circles. So we study together, both online and on-site. And for example, the project that I've just associated is called Ambassadors of Ukrainian Meaning Making. It's for Ukrainians abroad and Ukrainians inside Ukraine to maintain the social texture and to be of support to each other, where we unite the best Ukrainian thinkers, philosophers, theologians, psychologists, civic leaders, and do the work in a way that we listen to them in terms of meaning making that is happening for Ukraine, and at the same time facilitate group work and do the resource meetings as well for people. So there's a lot of things happening.
Thank you. We're going to be leaving the breakout room in a moment, and we're going to certainly continue this discussion later. But I'm going to wrap up the formal meeting when we leave here. But please stay, because there's a lot still to be said and share. And Jeff, I saw your hand up. Let's do it in the break, in the end of the meeting later on. Are we ready to go, Kathleen?
Tom, one thing to consider is if people would like different breakout groups during our after party, we can do that too. That might be an option.
Okay, I'll consider as we get there.
Consider that.
So why don't we all?
So I thought maybe each.
Hello.
Hi. Mace, I haven't quite a whole prepared speech. It's quite a wide topic, but maybe you guys can just very shortly, with one sentence, say what you're interested in, and then we can pick up on that and we can start a conversation going. How about that?
So how many people are in the room?
About 7 now, I think. 6. Yeah.
Hello,
Okay,
Yaroslav. Hi, Tom.
7, yeah, 7, 8. Okay, hello.
Hi. Hi, Yaroslav. Okay. So I just said, if you guys just say very shortly with one sentence or so what you're interested in, and then we can pick up the conversation from there rather than saying anything prepared, okay?
Can you say your topic again, Auki?
It's so yeah.
Oh, pitfalls of green pacifism.
Pitfalls of green, yeah. It's and pacifism. I can let me say a few words about that. In the 80s, I was a pacifist. I demonstrated against nuclear weapons in Europe, and we were of course the Cold War was going on, early 80s, and I was morbidly against war. And one of the things I've learned since then, a lot I've learned since then, but one of the things I've learned since then is that not every war is equal, and not every war is the situation where young men are sent to war by old men to die. That is such a simplification of the situation. And but also one of the things that was happening when I was young is that obviously, I was born in 1963, which is only 18 years after the Second World War, and one of the topics in my youth, but was very strong, was that we had won the fight for freedom. So there was this, and it was not a very nationalistic sort of approach, but it was a moral thing happening. I was reading all these books in my youth about the Dutch resisting the Germans and so on. And then I got older and I found out that the Dutch actually, a lot of the Dutch actually helped the Germans. It wasn't as romantic as it was portrayed in the books. But a theme in that, and I think that's also something I caught from my mother, is that we valued freedom of expression. We valued our democracy. My parents, after the war, um, sort of managed to get from working class more into the lower middle class. We were prosperous. And then in the 80s, we started to travel to Poland. First starting that with a charity program where we were part of, and later we had our personal connections there, and I did my study there. And I started to see what it was like to live in a society that didn't have all these benefits we had. So, Poland was under the occupation basically of Russia. It didn't have any of the orange or green levels developed that I grew up with. And life was very different there. And that was a very important thing for me to understand the value of freedom of expression, democracy and so on. And the other thing to say about that is that so that was part of that. And at the same time, growing up in the 70s, I was in a school that was very politically aware. We were very aware of the atrocities of the Vietnam War and about what America was doing in Central America. So, being on the left side of the political spectrum, we very much against imperialism of Western countries as well. And so one of the things I see today is that where I've learned to sort of distinguish these things, seeing Western imperialism, but also understanding what it is like to live under a more, red-blue autocratic system, or even, dictatorial system. I think that's one of the things that have sort of taught me that there's an order in things. So currently, especially a lot of young people these days, they are fighting against the unhealthy orange in our Western societies, rightly so. But they often group with the very people that are threatening the basis, the freedom of our society, the democracy, and so on. I mean, just the other day, I posted this thing in one of the Sparrow groups where, what Donald Trump is saying right now about, annexing Greenland and all those things. That was being, analyzed on Fox News as, well, maybe it's a good thing. And I found a clip on Russian television what was talking about, annexing Poland and all that. And I'm not saying that the countries are the same. Luckily, they're vastly different. But what I'm seeing is that the leadership in many of the Western countries are taking us back into a political system that at the moment may seem to take down the unhealthy part of orange, but once it gets into power, it will take us back into the dark ages of autocracy, of fascism, of all these sort of whatever names we give to it, to systems that we don't want to live under. So how is that? What are you guys seeing, and how is that for you? And how do you experience that?
Well, I'm curious, Alki, what that looks like for you, and how are you different since you've moved from that more pacifist to less pacifist?
Yeah.
What does it look like, and what are you hoping for going forward, or anybody else could answer that as well? I mean,
Yeah.
for me, it means just supporting Ukraine to have everything that they need to try to win this war. But, as nonviolent communication trainer, it's also hard knowing that war is pretty awful.
Yeah, well, I mean, Julie, you're aware that, within nonviolent communication, we've talked about protective use of force. Right? So
Absolutely.
it's not about, I think that we have to realize that what's happening in East Ukraine is not, Ukrainian soldiers and the Ukrainian government didn't go to war because they wanted to gain something. They wanted to keep something. They wanted to keep this freedom that we all know. The fact that, I mean, I actually I have some friends in Russia, but they can't they wouldn't even dare to be here because they are uh, you know there's a threat of them going to jail if they say the wrong thing.
Mm.
And I think many of us living in the West have no idea what it is like to live under circumstances like that.
Mm.
Or I mean, I'm not even talking about the extreme poverty and lots of other things there.
Mm.
But another thing that I'm seeing is that there's so much misinformation going around,
Mhm.
specifically in integral circles, spiral circles, of people simplifying what's happening, and and I think a lot of internal cultural wars of Western countries are fought over topics like Ukraine and Russia, but also topics like Israel and Palestine.
Mhm.
That's another situation where I see a lot of Western people um, with all good intentions put their alliance uh, primarily with Palestinians without understanding that what they're actually doing is supporting the purple red forces in Palestine that are actually the cause of much of the misery. And that's that conflict actually is a lot more complex than Ukraine is. And I'm not saying that everything that Israel is doing is the right thing, but there we really have to see again with using the values of spiral dynamics, we have to understand the complexity of things, and we have to see that on both sides of that conflict there are purple red values driven people, and they're fighting against it's a fight between democracy and autocratic rule, and it's happening everywhere in the world. We have to really understand that. Maria? Oh, I thought you were
So
going to
much.
say something.
Well, there's so much that's happening for me in this discussion, and I have to presence that I'm feeling anger. I'm very angry at the way that things are unfolding in the US and the politicizing of the war in the Ukraine to be something that's based on whether you're a Republican or you're a Democrat is an oversimplification, I think, of some of what you're describing, when this is something that transcends those sides. And that people in our government are using the war in Ukraine as a political pawn to get what they want for something unrelated. I'll stop right there.
It's interesting, right? Because in some of the conversations we've had, people have blamed the US government for supporting the war industry, the weapon industry and so on. And and obviously there is lots of complex dynamics there. And what I want to say is that if we start to look from an integral perspective, I think we have to realize that some people can do the right thing for the wrong reason. Right. So we may not support. I mean, an interesting thing is Mark Rutte, which used to be our prime minister, is now head of NATO, Secretary General of the NATO. And I mean, I have been appalled by his politics for the 13 years he was our prime minister. And now he, all of a sudden, to me, starts to make sense about what he says around Ukraine. Now I can stay in my political convictions and bubble and say, oh, Mark Rutte is bad, that's happening in the Netherlands. A lot of people on the left side of politics. Recently, I should explain this. Recently, Mark Rutte said, we have to prepare for war because this is coming to the rest of Europe, and he actually was right with that, in my view. And but then a lot of people on the left side of politics, started to post things against that and so on, because they feel this align, like Rutte is the bad guy for my political conviction. So whatever he says is not right. And it's like from an integral perspective, we should always be prepared to listen to any voice and to see whether what they say makes sense or not. And we can even support the wrong people for the right reasons.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
But it's
Mhm.
hard. I mean, I also hear the anger. I also feel that, right? And I mean, our country's been taken over by quite right-wing political parties currently. It's a bit more complex than the US, but it's anti-immigration, also a prime minister or like a political leader who is secretly pro-Russian and who has autocratic ambitions. And it's very painful to see that. But let's use that pain and the anger to see what we can do to choose a path that steers away from that.
Completely agree. It's good fuel.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it is good that we observe the emotions, but they are part of all the dynamics, right? So it's not something we should push away.
Mhm.
I mean, for us, it's at least only the emotions. The people in Ukraine, they have to deal with a lot more than just that. So
It's interesting because just a couple of months ago, I would be saying, vote, but now we've passed a point, and I know people who voted for the incoming president because they felt that he would avoid war, and that was it. So thank you for giving me the space to share that. There's a lot more that I could say, but I want to open the space up and invite other people, please.
Yeah. Forrest, please.
Hey, y'all. I'm enjoying being here. Thank you. I just feel like regrounding in the question that Tucker invited earlier about tactically and practically, right? I'm sitting in the US right now. I'm in Austin, Texas today. And so what can someone like me who's sitting in Austin, Texas do that's helpful and supportive for Ukraine in this moment? And maybe we can blend in the context of this breakout room and explore the potential pitfalls of green consciousness in relationship to this question. But I'm really with I'm just going to take one moment here. I feel connected to what's happening in Ukraine, especially through my connection with Victoria. And it's very easy to just forget that things in Ukraine are happening in daily life. And so I just want to name that, how easy it is to just move through the day without being in relationship with what's happening in Ukraine.
Yaroslav, I would love to hear from you as someone right in the heart of all this.
Yeah, well, yes. So, thank you so much. I just wanted to once again to reiterate, how grateful I am and how touched I am for that connectedness and for the support that we feel from the pilgrims, who attended our pilgrimage, who returned to their homes and who had the choice to dive again into their everyday lives and forget about us, but we see how much they stayed connected with us in their in their feelings, in their minds, in their actions. And it's something that is really touching me, and I'm really feel very grateful for it. And and for me, it is a kind of model which could be, in case it is a little more expanded, it could be the key to real sustainable peace and to the end of all this war. No, we really we are facing very strong opposing party, let's say, and we really need some support from the international community. And what I felt, what we saw in the beginning of the war, during the first year of the war, I saw that the support of Ukraine in the Western communities, in my perception, was higher than the support of the governments. Well, because the governments are, they have their inertia, they have their inertia. So, but in the democratic societies, the government policies, they with that inertia, they follow the opinion of the society. So, and they were drifting to more and more support of Ukraine. But unfortunately, during the last year, I feel that the Western societies, they are a kind of drifting to, unfortunately, to less support, and it causes the trend to less support from the countries, from the governments, and in a way, people like our guests, like pilgrims, people like you, are the ones in my perception who been part of these societies or these communities, being yourself, yeah, and I don't know, talking to your families, your friends, your communities. You are the ones who are really doing, I believe, important part of making grounds for better, for higher support of Ukraine in by your countries, by your communities. So I believe what can be done is what you are, most of you, I believe you are doing. Just please keep doing it.
That's nice. Thank you.
Thank you. I get a message here that we have to start closing the space. Alexander, you want to have a quick words?
Yeah, hello. I'm just gonna join the group because I like this integral view from international community on what's going on. And I'm Ukrainian who just fled with big family, and I know the situation from like two perspectives, like from my friends and relatives, and from abroad, how the people from other countries see the situation. So, and it's like I guess funny things. I guess I was stuck somewhere in the green area as a person just before the war. But now I just understand that it just for those who stuck, they just were pushed like furthermore. And then it's interesting to see how the world and then mature people react to the war. And then I guess Ukrainians now. Can just show the personal examples of how it can be differently, and this with these horizontal networks and this building these communities. I guess I'm very happy that a lot of people nowadays understand, and then war is part of life, and I'm glad that you shared your personal experience from pacifist to 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 the person who understands this, that this is not black and white life nowadays. So I mean, this is like, and I like what Katya said, that just visit Ukraine, and I guess you'll see that the world is like life is going on, and then the small steps, like you will see what's will be connected to you. I guess this is this message I wanted to say, that life is go on, war is part of life. The choices are always yours, and then that's I just wanted to share this emotion. So it's not about angry at something and politicians. My teacher of English is from Denver, Colorado, American who lives near Kiev. He bought a house during the war, like 1 year ago, and this renovated despite the drones which fly. And he's a very patriotic American Ukrainian, and he was so upset with Trump. And I actually was like the one who just said, "Look, life is going on. Maybe it's even better. Like, let's look at this as a positive, from the positive perspective." So my point of view is like, thank you for you just taking care and paying attention and just observing. And like I just joined the Katya's invitation. Just if you see some calling or if you see something which is angry, like different feelings, just consider just come to Ukraine. I guess it's like it will be a new experience economy because it's like it'll be a new experience economy who moves to transformational economy. I guess Ukraine will be a very good example, and Ukrainian people and Ukrainian cases will be one of the examples to study. That's it. Sorry for long emotional speech.
No, thank you very much, Alexandra. I also, Forrest, there's a couple of things that come up to me when I hear your question, and specifically for those people that are in the US, I would say keep yourself well informed, because I understand that your media is so separated, it's so polarized, and so to keep ourselves informed about what's really happening in Ukraine, I think that's an important thing, and I think it's about like we should bring down what our focus of integral should be about freedom and the possibility for people to as individuals to prosper, which requires a certain type of society, and I think we should fight for that. And in that view, we have to be very clear that there is a
Hey, hello all. Thank you for joining. So I understand it must be a difficult choice because I would love to join other rooms. So as to this section, actually, the topic I proposed was leadership without the word development, because just to reflect on the leadership aspect of the whole meta crisis and what is happening in Ukraine, but as we perceive ourselves as a part of this global mess, then the leadership aspect becomes really important. So that was the intention. So let me very quickly introduce myself. Some of you I already know. I'm Vitas, the short version of my name. For the last almost 8 years, I'm working in leadership development. I mainly work with business leaders, but in Ukraine, most of the business leaders are also societal leaders, and all of them are now, one way or another, involved in this war effort. So basically, you cannot really distinguish which are which type of leaders. And I'm an Integral Master Coach, certified from Integral Coaching Canada. Maybe you've heard, this is the coaching school which was based on the integral theory of Ken Wilber, and I found out about the school sometime in the beginning of 2010s from Ken Wilber's books, actually. And before that, I was a banker, so nobody's perfect. So I would not like to spoil this discussion, and I would really like you to. I invite you to reflect on how you see the leadership aspect, because generally my take on especially on the political and global political leadership of the last 10 to 15 years is really sad and critical, and probably I would just like to quote. I don't remember whose quote that was. And in the short video, which Tucker showed in the beginning in the piece that he didn't show was that Katerina, my wife, and the host of another breakout room, she used that, which was very, very powerful in this Ukrainian context, that hard times create strong people create good times, and good times create weak people, and weak people create hard times. So that's the general context. And you all coming from different countries or living in different countries at the moment. I don't know how many countries we can count in this room. I think at least 5 or 6. And I just would like you to invite share what are your takes on the leadership aspect of this meta crisis. Hey, Lina. By the way, let me, before, if no one wants to jump in, I would like to ask if any one of you have read the article that Katerina was referring to, the Anne Applebaum's article. I really like the new term that she introduced, which is new obscurantism. Which
the dark times.
Yeah, really dark times. That my first impression was that the postmodernisms were playing with the deconstruction of reality for so long, and it appears, and usually it was more associated with the political left, and now it seems that the two can play at this game, and yeah. So okay, so let me drop some ideas into the field. So looking at the leadership from Ukrainian perspective and at the global leadership, when we look at the recent leaders of the US and the major European countries, I mean Germany, France, the UK, and mainly for us, Germany, living in Ukraine, especially since it's so related with the Russian influence over Europe and generally global influence. What we witness is roughly since the middle 2000s or the end of like roughly 2007 and 8, I think was the break-even moment that the leadership was generally characterized by weakness, indecisiveness, compliance, and general avoidance of uncomfortable topics. Yeah, so sometimes I have little conflicts with my friends in the US when we reflect on the recent leaders, and for us, Barack Obama, for example, is, someone very charismatic and a very nice person, but extremely weak as a leader. And I even had some conflicts with my American friends from the Integral community who generally, look at him as someone saint compared to the recent kind of political developments. But unfortunately, what we witness that leaders like Obama and Angela Merkel and Sarkozy and some other global leaders of the last roughly 15 years were generally indecisive and avoiding very uncomfortable topics, including, of course, confronting Russia, confronting Putin, who was very consistently and deliberately destroying the whole Western order and doing it very, very aggressively. And what we see recently that this trend unfortunately continues, and the only decisive leaders or leaders who kind of tend to look decisive, they are like Putin's and Putin, Trump, Orban, and these kinds of leaders. My take is like, what the unfortunately, what I see at the moment that the more conscious part of the kind of elites or kind of societal leaders, they're still not taking responsibility for this change. And I see so much denial, including in the States, in Canada, in the UK, denial of the responsibility of that whole trend, which was dominating, and for what has been happening, including Trump becoming so powerful, and what is happening to us, and us being at the pinnacle, in Ukraine, at the pinnacle of all those changes. This is so sensitive. So let me stop here, because there are so many avenues I would like to follow, and maybe hear some of you. How do you see it from your countries? Yes.
Yeah, my name is Lorraine. I don't know why that owner comes up, but
Yeah, that's a strange name.
yeah, I'm curious as to how you see Zelensky. I mean, he's been a phenomenon to those of us watching from the outside. He is so identified with the people. Again, this is what it seems like from the outside. He seems to capture who you are, the guts, the ongoing effort in the face of all of this. He has confronted world leaders. I mean, he also makes nice, now that Trump is coming in, you have to have some sort of relationship with other dealers. But what works for the Ukrainian people in terms of Zelensky's leadership?
So let me drop a few words, and then I would like some of my Ukrainian friends to pick up. So that's a deep and complex topic.
Sure.
So of course there are several Zelenskys during this war, almost 3 years of this war. So what we know as the aura, as the legend, was the Zelensky of the first few months of this full-scale invasion, which when he played really historical role, and he demonstrated really strong and decisive leadership. And I think his decision not to flee Kiev in the first days was historical, literally. I think that will go into books of history for the next few hundred years. And we deeply respect him for that. And that's a part of his character, of his personality, what we know. He's really tough. Unfortunately, after some time, when the war entered in the other phase, in the long-term, patience and resilience type of kind of phase, it's a completely different story. And unfortunately, he's not, as if we speak integral terms, he's not as mature and complex leader. And on the one hand, it's easy to critique him. On the other hand, I would see what any of us would do in his position, with his burden of responsibility. And we have very complex and confused kind of attitude to him. He is not the most popular person now in Ukraine. On the other hand, we still respect him as a political leader of the country at this phase. And he has strong sides and he has weaknesses. His strong sides, of course, is communication and the ability to convince and to bring the message, And his weakness, I think, is lack of trust, and he has very close, small circle of people he's managing the country with. So thanks to this very strong civic society, some of the people who are here in this call, there is the balance to this kind of political, and the country stays very consciously stays democratic. So let me stop here.
I'm sorry, just one more little follow-up on that. I struggle with what leadership should look like all the time. I'm the oldest of 4 children, so I sort of grew up in a leadership position. And I was never a good leader, in my view. Somebody was always unhappy. Or even a parent. You have 4 children, different ages. Your approach to each one of those children has to be different. I think of it in integral terms. People are at different levels of development.
Sure.
And you have a country at 6 or 7 different levels of development, which is the United States. How do you be a leader that brings together all of those different levels, or at least satisfies some of the needs? So what do you see as sort of an ideal to try and achieve as a leader of many different levels of people?
So building on the integral theory, it's quite an easy answer to have as mature, kind of at least the yellow or teal level, or kind of strategist level, at least second tier leader with very complex thinking, and hopefully who has done a lot of inner work and shadow work and healed all the traumas, and which is like, I can stop here, and
which doesn't exist
pretty much impossible.
Yeah. But yeah. So that would be an ideal. Okay.
Yeah, of course. So, but what we miss, and of course Zelensky is not there. So the only way to kind of to compensate it is to have really active and conscious civic society, which we do have in Ukraine, and which is still functioning really well. So I like the quote by our friend Lene Rachel Andersen from Denmark, and she's a writer and philosopher, that we humans generally do not solve the problems we have, we solve the problems we understand. So so when the leader reduces the reality to the level of their understanding, here the problem begins. And we have just a few minutes left. I would like really to ask our Ukrainian friends on this in this room to jump in and add something that what you see in terms of leadership, or Zelensky specifically playing out in Ukraine. Or maybe please ask other questions, or offer like aspects which you would like to discuss. So I see Erki here from Estonia, my close friend, another integral master coach from the same sect, and we have discussed this leadership aspect in the context of the war in Ukraine and Eastern Europe in general, and we had quite many discussions of that. So I wonder if you would like to offer something, or
Yeah,
or
no,
just
but the
ask.
preceding conversation was, were you actually sort of color coding Zelensky as well? Was that part of a discussion right now?
Not yet. I was not. Actually, I'm not trying to. The question of leadership is so wide and so broad and so soft and so multi-layered and so philosophical. So I don't want to try to structure it in this call and frame it. I really want to hear what is interesting to discuss. And would you like to?
Willing, that's actually pretty interesting. Like, what's sort of your gut sense of, I don't know, spiral dynamics level wise? How do you see Zelensky or people around him? Like,
okay.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting topic. So I see Zelensky as very orange in terms of Wilber's level, so spiral dynamic in his center of gravity, or an achiever in terms of of ego development theory, with as all of us, with some developmental shadows, and he clearly has developmental shadows in red. I mean, knowing his biography, and which he grew up in a very industrial and very rough city with a specific kind of rough working class culture. And in order to survive, even being a child and a teenager, living in that kind of working class district of that city, he needed to grow up as very tough. So he still has this strong backbone, which has both very positive qualities, as with this decision not to flee Kiev. And of course, it may have some dark side. So fortunately, I didn't see that dark side playing out too obviously, but he does have this side, and I think he has some. I would say the blue allergy in terms of some lack of trust to broader society, to his kind of fellow citizens, because he's only trusting that small circle of people. So in terms of developmental perspectives, I would say he's deep in the orange. He has a background of very successful businessman and a showman, of course. And that's generally fine. I will probably put it out here. Anyone would like to add something to that?
Maybe just from my perspective, I'm just happened to be in the middle of this book, Showman, Zelensky's biography, Simon Schuster. So, like, it does definitely give a lot of Orange Achiever vibes. His well, inside view of his leadership. So that resonates with me at least.
I'm curious, do you see any signs of emerging other levels in Zelensky, the green or second tier?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I've been observing him for quite some time in terms of this. Unfortunately, no, I think he's under such a systemic stress and pressure with all his responsibility that the circle of trust is even closing down, kind of is even diminishing, which is a sad reality. And unfortunately, I don't expect much of development. I think he's more in this trauma and extreme pressure, which is also understandable.
Seems to me that pretty much any officially designated world leader experiences trauma all the time. And what we see in most of them is a decrease in trust in a smaller and smaller circle. Not just everyone, right? And I have a completely different thing I want to say, which is when we think about leadership, I'm working hard myself. I'm not always successful to see other forms than the bureaucratic designated leaders. So what I saw in Kyiv was extremely brilliant leadership by people who appointed themselves. Thank you very much, Vitas, you being one of them, and Lilia, you being another, and Natalia being another, right? Extreme leadership, but we don't see it. And I think it's really important that we see it, because our attention is not directed towards where I believe global leadership is going. And by not naming it and presencing it and witnessing it, we don't give it the strength that I think it deserves and needs.
Yeah, thank you, Marianne, for bringing that up. And that's extremely important. And what we are doing, we are from Ukraine, we are really encouraging international organizations and even governments of other people and then the countries that support us we really encourage them to include those informal civic leaders in decision making, in really bringing influence, because that's the way the civic leadership can influence the political structures and political leaders.
But also, I think people in the world, people, citizens, residents,
Exactly.
need to see this, because we have such a small view of what leadership is,
Sure.
that it feels like there's no hope. But if we have a broader view, there's more hope, I think.
Sure, yeah, and everything I've been reflecting on the Western political leadership, of course, we should look at the other kind of part, at the civic and what forms of leadership can we find in societies. Yeah, unfortunately, what we witness, there are many people very much focused on the comfort, on comfort, avoiding insecurity, and including, how many people accepted our invitation to come to Ukraine last September. Well, that was also reflected. So yeah, so we very much expect more from that kind of leadership from the Western countries.
Also, I think there's so much fear and anger here anyway. Such a huge amount of anger. It's hard to speak with anyone. You have to be very
Yeah. I think our room will close in some 50 seconds. Yeah, so let me thank for you, all of you joining and sharing. And of course, this topic of leadership is too broad to make all the decisions, but I think we have touched upon the most significant aspects. Yeah, and the aspect of fear that Marianne, you just touched, and anger. I think anger in most cases is the defense mechanism against fear, and unfortunately, looking our fears in the eyes is the solution, not trying to avoid it. That's part of leadership from my point of view. So thank you all again for being in this room and sharing.
All right, welcome back, everybody. I imagine I was in some of the rooms and it seemed like there was a lot of energy even as they were coming to a close. So yeah, again, just seeing this as an opportunity to begin a relationship, to reach out a hand, and hopefully many flowers will blossom from the connections that are happening now, both in our own hearts and also in our network and in our world.
Yeah. Thank you, Tucker, for facilitating this, and all of our panelists. Please stay, because in a few moments, we're going to go to the informal chat, and these tend to be very, very rich, because there's so much more to be said. So just to end the formal meeting.
Hey, Tom, can I just ask, were we ending at the top of the hour, or are we ending now?
Now, but we're going to go into the informal.
Gotcha. Okay. I thought we had until 11.
So I think Tucker has already put a lot of information where you can get involved in other ways in the chat, and maybe we can get it summarized and put it somewhere on our meetup.
I'll do that. I'll do that, Tom.
Okay. So that you can continue your contact in whatever way you're able to help these people. A quick reminder, we're going to be meeting again on February 8th. It's the second Saturday every month. A side note, we're looking for new members for the leadership team of San Diego Integral. So if you feel so inclined to give form and shape to these types of presentations, please get a hold of me through my email, and we'll tell you how you can get involved and give direction to it. Another side note, the embodiment workshop in Boulder, Colorado is coming up April 3rd to 5th. And tickets are on sale now. I wanted to summarize what hit me real quick to start the discussion off. And you can either jump in or raise your hand when the discussion starts to unfold in a couple minutes. I love Valerie's comment of how the lower left values of the Ukraine are about the future, and Russia's really trying to implement the past. And it is evolutionary reassuring that authoritarianism produces really bad decisions and bad goals because they're not inclusive enough in order to draw from the plethora of information that's really available. In knowing that Red sees negotiation as weaknesses, attunes us, how do we deal with those type of people? What do we lead with in order to do that? And many times in green, I think we do make that mistake. I love the Katerina's, I hope I'm saying that right, idea of the transformation that's undergoing for these people during crisis. And even though our crisis with our, what Vitas had said, we're fighting the same war, is happening here. It isn't near the magnitude, but that transformation of the clarity and how the fragility produces the opportunity to become more. I love that. It's great that in our own evolutionary process, it seems to be baked in order to reach higher levels. And if you want to heal quicker, we've known it's always about helping others and moving on. Victoria reiterating it, how to support ourselves, paying attention to our own needs, and then switching into helping others. That oscillation between the two, that personally I could do a better job with right now. And then she said in a breakout room, just the simple niceties of have a good day, enjoy your coffee, is kind of a collective resonance that we do in order to sustain each other as we go through our days. Vitas's comments about America's historical trauma from Vietnam to Afghanistan and a few others in between, we haven't fully recovered that. We don't tend to discuss our problems as well as other people do. And it renders us unable to act in the face of things like the Ukraine, or the people that really need support. So, and finally, Ox comments on using spirituality to dissociate from the reality of the world was really succinct. I thought this was a wonderful presentation. I was wondering what was going to be formulated from the war in the Ukraine to articulate the integral values and visions and tools we have. But boy, there's nothing like trauma to really give life to the choices we have to make. So that's my initial impression. And I invite you to start unmuting yourself and jump into the discussion right now.
Katerina?
Yeah, there is one piece that I wanted to add even during our panel discussion, and I would like to add it now. Something I'm thinking a lot about is what kind of civic education do we need for the 21st century? Because I think it's like a background that we're missing, and generations of people have missed this fundamental background on which we can build emotional, spiritual, and other types of development. And yes, it's about up to solid orange speaking with spiral dynamics terms, but it is so much needed. Human rights, critical thinking, debate, making grounded assessments. This is something very much missing in the world education systems. And I think that what we're having now, those pathologically narcissistic, psychopathic leaders who came to power based on their charisma and just throwing words to the wind without any grounded assessments and misusing facts. This is, and that people vote for it, this is the result of absence of civic education. So I believe we need to make a step behind and see what are the flaws and lacunas in our education, especially history, in order to then make more conscious choices. And I know spirituality is a big theme in the integral community. And I think this is like the best way to practice spirituality is actually to learn world history for today. Thank you.
And I think you mean not only formal education, but you know, informal adult education, which is systemically missing. And it makes, you know, the problem that not those political leaders are throwing meaningless words. The problem is that people are buying those words so easily and voting for them. I'd like to add another layer, continuing on the spirituality aspect. What we witness, looking from Ukraine, especially from our, you know, social bubbles that we were connected or are connected with, our professional communities in the West, in the States, in Canada, in Western Europe, that we see a lot of spiritual bypassing, a lot of avoidance of real discussions, of uncomfortable discussions, of facing the uncomfortable truth, of having those really hard talks, you know, by spiritual bypassing, by framing it into very high, you know, high flying spiritual terminology and going to meditate on that instead of really having those discussions.
Sure. Yeah, maybe I can, from my experience, I can say that the thing which is really missing in the culture worldwide almost is that we do not really face the fact that both good and bad are inside of us. And we always are only trying to identify with that we are good people. But that's not true. There is a war inside of us. And as long as we do not take care of that, we export the war outside. And that's the world where we're living in. So that's what my thought about it is.
I like to add another aspect to that, because I agree with the education part, but I also see a lot of very educated people believing a lot of misinformation, and I think there's various reasons for that. We've talked about spiritual bypassing. Part of that also is that we within the green layer, we create a culture where feeling is more important than information. So it's a rejection of the Orient science often. But I think also what happens a lot is that people are in bubbles, and they follow the bubbles. So that you're part of a political party or a spiritual group or whatever, and an opinion develops there, and then you're not allowed to move against that. Part of that also is comfort. I mean, I've been part of a spiritual community during COVID times where you could say the spiritual leader started to, in my view, follow a lot of right-wing misinformation, and if you would say anything about that, you were breaking the harmony of the group. So I got a lot of very aggressive responses, and in the end, I just decided to step out of the whole thing. But we have to have the courage to step out when we feel that what is being said is no longer truth, and that's where we also have to be aware of, how much have we, how much is the being part of such a group part of our comfort zone? Because you're part of this, integral community or spiritual community or whatever it is, and it gives you a certain comfort. And if you go against the truth of that group, and especially within green, you are kicked out. I mean, this wasn't my first experience of being kicked out of, catapulting out of green. I've had that in other intentional communities as well. But this path to go to more an integral view means that we have to be able to prepare to let go of the comfort of whatever group we're part of, if we feel that the truth is not served in that. And that can be very harsh, right? So it can be very painful, but that's the only choice. That's the only thing we can do, I think, at the end, if we realize we become part of a group or a cult that in which only one truth can be, or at least a non-truth is ruling. Let's put it that way.
Hey, I want to, sorry to interrupt the meeting flow, but we're nearing the end of the 2-hour mark. And I believe Tucker Walsh has a few things to say because he's the one that pulled together all our beautiful and eloquent and speaking 5 languages panelists. Go ahead, Tucker.
I don't have anything to say other than just a big, big gratitude to everybody for showing up, and especially to our Ukrainians and to Ak for being here. There's also so many integral Ukrainian leaders that have been on the call that weren't featured in the panel discussion, and just people who are doing amazing work. So thank you all so much for being here. Tom, I was wondering if it seems like there's still energy to continue the dialogue. Can we go past the top of the hour?
Absolutely.
Great. I would love to hear, just on a personal level, from others on the call, just what's stirring in you, what came up, what's something new that you learned. Yeah, I'd love to get other voices in.
Tom, jump in, Tom.
So just to follow up on what Alka was saying, one thing that's driven me mad for 3 years is there's a segment of the American left that sees everything that happened in 2014 as a CIA plot, and that it was all done by the CIA. And it just, and speaking of what you were saying, Alka, if you disagree with that, then you're out of the group. And it's such willful ignorance. It just drives me mad. That's just one aspect.
We hear a lot about American imperialism. And the Ukraine is the victim of American imperialism, and that should stop. So this is kind of bullshit, which is really, really painful for us to witness. And unfortunately, it is coming from people who consider themselves higher up in that developmental spiral, which is such a self-deception, I think.
Vitas, and please add how happy you are as a Lithuanian that Lithuania is part of NATO.
Oh, of course. Oh, of course. And I'm coming from Lithuania, a small country near the Baltic Sea, the Eastern Europe, and there is my close friend Erki in this call from Estonia, another small country, and we were so happy and fortunate to join NATO and the EU in the beginning of 2000s, when all that political left was not that dominant. And unfortunately, I think 10 years later, we would be blocked by leaders like Obama and Angela Merkel and others, and we would be really victim to Russian imperialism. So thank you. We admire American imperialism. Thank you for that. Please continue. Please go on.
What to me is so wrong about that view of this just being played out between the US and Russia is that it completely denies Ukrainians' agency. And it, if you think that we're running things from the Western side, just look at what's happening on the Eastern side. There is no, like, what's happening is such a deep expression of the Ukrainian courage and agency. It's just a ridiculous point of view. Anyway, not adding anything that hasn't been said. I just wanted to share something since we've been talking a lot about kind of the green, unhealthy green and that impact. I wanted to say something like a little personal observation I made being in Ukraine is there were two words that I kept hearing in the pilgrimage that were like words that my own postmodern self had edited out of my brain. And I kept hearing them, and they were victory and evil. And it was such an interesting kind of self-reflection for me whenever I would hear those words, and I'd feel a little discomfort in myself about those words to look at my own kind of postmodern green peacemaker self that was uncomfortable with fighting a war. And I just want to share that kind of that little story with those two words. And it's a simple way for anyone who's to reflect on this is to befriend those two words, put them back in your lexicon.
What I would like to open up to the group, if there's any interest in this, is the potential for the conversation to look a little bit even outside of just the war in Ukraine. And what I mean by that is there, I feel, are so many things that are unfolding across the planet. Sorry, now my dog's trying to get into my peanut butter toast. The issues that we're facing across the planet are big and complex, right? There's wealth inequality, we have climate change, there's disinformation, there's runaway tech, there's a massive shift technologically with AI, there is weapons of mass destruction, and wealth inequality. And thinking through history and in these cycles sort of repeating themselves, I don't know if someone has looked into like the work that's been done by Peter Turchin and or William Strauss and Neil Howe and the Fourth Turning.
Yeah.
And of course, the other thing I didn't mention, I think, is the mass psychoses from disinformation. So I'm just throwing that out there. And to be clear, I am 100% on the side that Ukraine is fighting for the future of the planet, not just their future. They're fighting for my future. And I'm deeply grateful and do everything I can to try and lift this, what you're doing, up. Thank you.
So amplifying the last few things Marie just said is it's amazing that we come together as a collective from all over the world and how threatening that is to many leaders in the world because they can't control that. Is we're in brotherhood and sisterhood with all of you. And eventually, this is what's going to come to pass. Evolution is relentless. And if they can slow it down, or in their delusional mind, stop it into these isolated fiefdoms they were used to, it's not going to happen. We're becoming a collective. I was reflecting upon how much things like Zoom has actually amplified the emergence of this collective. Because we are in brotherhood and sisterhood with all of you. Although there's going to be ugly things like what's going on in the Ukraine right now.
One of our speakers called what Marie was alluding to the Ukrainian phenomenon, and that resonated with me because it is bigger than Ukraine, and the cause of freedom is flowing to other countries that are trying to get out of Russia's grip, make Russia small again.
I wonder if anyone can summarize some of the best actions we can take locally in our own communities.
Well,
maybe Tucker, if you have thoughts about that.
I'd love to see if one of the panelists has something to share on that. But that was a question that came up in a couple of breakout rooms, is as just a human, living in a state in America that just doesn't have any special connections or any, obvious forms of power wielding, what can we do on just a practical level to be of support? If you'd love to hear.
Yeah, can I step in here for a second? How do I start? Probably about 3 or 4 years ago, an acquaintance mentioned that we were going to be facing these kind of apocalyptic changes or challenges, specifically in the year 2025. But it was not certain it would be 2025. It would be sometime in the 2020s. And I just felt a calling to share with people the knowledge that I had and develop better capacities or tools for discernment. How do you sort out the lies and the conspiracies and the misinformation from what is really true? And I do that by sharing a lot of information. Some of it is psychological, some of it is about neuroscience, a lot of it is about integral, but I just have a very small women's discussion group where I share videos from people that are a lot more knowledgeable than I am. And I make an assignment of watch this video, and then we're going to discuss it next week. And the interesting thing about it is people who normally wouldn't get involved in this kind of work do. They at least come and want to know. They're interested in seeing things from a broader perspective. And I think we need to form a community to do that. And you can do it anywhere. You can call up your friends from 2 years ago to 25 years ago and say, listen, I have a different perspective on things. How about let's share them? That's it.
Any other ideas?
That's actually was something that we developed for a couple of years now, 3 years now. Because when we found out that it was the beginning of the war, there is a lot of people who had to move places and who had to run somewhere in Europe, somewhere into other places of Ukraine. So we created this online meetings so that we could be there one for each other and discuss and work and, create this kind of islands of sanity, islands of adequacy, because that's something that helps to be connected no matter where you are. And something that Tom said, Zoom became a savior in instrument in this case. Yeah. I also wanted to bring the question that somehow this notion didn't rise up in today's 2.5 hours now. I would like to bring the sense of urgency and the sense of while we're trying to make this kind of meta level every time we're thinking, oh, Ukraine is not the only place where there is war, there is some other places. Oh, it's not only war, but that's also cyber propaganda and so on, so on, so on. The more we go to the meta level, the more people who are sitting right now in front of you are feeling that, you know, or for example, like my parents who are in Dnipro, they feel like they are abandoned by, you know, this kind of escapism to a highest level thing. So I think this sense of urgency here might be very important, as I already shared in one of the breakout rooms that I live in Berlin, and I'm seeing Germany not even understanding the sense of urgency even close, while Germany is 2 hours away from Kiev by civil airplanes and 7 minutes by ballistic trajectory. And they still do not understand the sense of urgency. They still make the decisions extremely, extremely slow and extremely, extremely self-protecting and trying not to see what is happening literally 1,000 kilometers from them. I think that you mentioned the cities where you come from in US, and they are sometimes even further away than 1,000 kilometers. But you live in one country, and this is something that I really think that might be an important thing to think about, is the sense of urgency and making the decisions that are helpful to cover the fire with a blanket, while the fire is getting further and further away, just like it's the raging fire in Santa Monica now. If that is not put down, like not put out, it's going to go huge. So this is something that I would really want to focus on. The sense of urgency sometimes brings a lot of meaning and a lot of sense to stand up and have the courage to act and to contribute and to sign and to serve and to sign up and so on. So thank you very much for everybody who was so inspired by the Emerge pilgrimage to create this meeting. My gratitude to you all.
Reagan, Katerina, just jump in.
There are a few things that are coming to my mind, what could be done. First of all, definitely writing your congressmen and senators. Very practical, very concrete. Please consult Jeff. He will tell how to do it, and maybe you can use his draft. Then another thing that you could do if you are a professional coach, for example, then there is an initiative that we recently launched. It's called Coach for Ukraine. If you want to give some pro bono hours of your work, for example, our coaches committed to 6 sessions with the Ukrainian coachees, who are usually civic leaders based in Ukraine or outside Ukraine due to different reasons related to war. And we made a pilot, and it turned out to be quite successful. And many people ask usually whether you need to be trauma-informed. Ukrainians are quite resilient. There is no need to be super qualified therapists, or we will not offer a person to you who needs that kind of support. But if you're a coach, basically you could volunteer and get a Ukrainian English-speaking coachee, so that you could maybe feel some personal kind of contribution in this situation. Also, in case we will get a high demand for another pilgrimage, we might consider making it happen. It's just that people need to really be very kind of direct in expressing this commitment. Last time we hoped for 70 people, we got 13. That was a little bit disappointing. We were super
But
happy.
13 most courageous ones.
Most courageous, exactly. Our beloved friends to whom we will be forever thankful, because we had very meaningful and happy time together, and it was a mutual exchange. Islands of sanity. In case you want to speak with your community and possibly bring some interesting viewpoints. Among us, there are English speakers who might be happy to contribute their time meeting your friends. Like in case you need us to convey some messages, we might be happy to get together and create something so that you could use also our willingness to share the word of mouth and convey important messages about freedom, dignity, and democracy. And this is our common fight. We're in the same boat. So this is also possible. Yeah, and last but not the least, I do not have any concrete suggestions, but I am all the time thinking about this possible course, integrally informed about the civic education for adults for the 21st century, how it may look like. But this is just an idea that I'm throwing. Thank you.
Anyone want to comment on how they're feeling at this point? Go ahead, Lorraine, jump in.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment a little on Katerina, your notion of civics for, teaching civics. So many of us were so disappointed with our elections and so frightened by what happened, and so aware that there is no value placed on education among at least half of this country. It's kind of terrifying, very eye-opening. Of course, we have for-profit media systems that fuel disinformation. And it's hard to imagine who would come to this class, and how can we reach them? It's really rather tragic. But as several of you made the point today, what's happening in Ukraine is happening here in the US. We are so divided. We are so many different nations with so many different value systems. And we have a tremendous challenge. How do we even get through the next 4 years? But I love so many of the things you've said. You are in the midst of a real situation and you're grappling it realistically. You're facing the fear, as you pointed out. And we're not there. We're not there yet as a country, I don't think. And I think we need to get there. We need to get serious. This isn't just about, not getting bored in our day-to-day lives. This is life, death, and the future of the human race. So I just wanted to say to all of you, your words were so moving and so real. And you pointed out so many important things, like all the spiritual bypassing. We do all this meditating in this country, and I don't know where it's getting us. It's a very individual, solitary activity. And one other really fascinating point one of you made was that even one of the things that the integral people aspire to is resonance, but there's a shadow side to connection and resonance, and that is, that mob mentality. Everything has a shadow side. And it's time for us to take these things seriously. So I really want to thank you. I was tremendously moved. Thank you.
Go ahead, John.
Okay, hi. I live here in California, and I was really concerned about our fellow humans, the immigrants, and what would happen to them once the start of the next presidential administration. And I started talking with my family and a friend of mine on city council. So we wrote a resolution for our city council to pass that welcomes immigrants. But I was concerned that I was stuck in a green cul-de-sac and that I wasn't thinking clearly. So I went and did some Google searches, and I found some articles from MIT research over the years that explain numerically the positive impact that immigrant labor has on the United States economy. And then when I went and spoke at City Council, I really made an effort to devise an integral little speech that would especially talk to people that are coming from the blue stage of development. The resolution passed. We were really grateful, but it had no teeth. It was just a feel-good resolution. And so while we were there, we met some people who were going to our board of supervisors. And these folks actually had a real resolution that would order the police, the sheriff department, not to do the work of ICE to hand immigrants over to ICE when they were done finishing up a jail term. So we went there. We heard a couple days beforehand that Elon Musk and Fox News had got the story and that they were urging followers to come out en masse to the Board of Supervisors in protest. I got very anxious, and I think that for me, what it helped me see is I have like an undeveloped red side, and I was unwilling to, walk away from my peaceful green meditative state and face these angry people that were anti-immigrant at the Board of Supervisors meeting. So when I went there, I was amazed at the experience I had because as we were talking about, the need for civic education and having not ungrounded assertions, but scientifically based arguments, I was amazed and felt a sense of beauty at how the people that argued in favor of the immigrants and in favor of an inclusive society all spoke and referred to evidence. Whereas the people arguing against immigrants, none of them based any of their comments on any facts. They were all based in basically in fears and an emotive state. So it was very empowering. I was sort of like walking through a portal, being afraid. While I was there, I was doxxed. So there was a man there that was taking photos of all of us and video of us. And it brought me to that, fearful state that I couldn't handle my red shadow. But I came through it realizing that there's this big community that came out, people from many different walks of life. There were priests, there was a Haitian lawyer, there were many immigrants from Mexico that came and spoke. And there was such a big community I didn't know about before. And everyone that spoke for the immigrants was very compassionate, calm, focused, inspiring. And I just realized how much power we have and how we are on the side of evolution.
Thank you, John. Something when you were speaking that I was reflecting on is yeah, this red quality, this red consciousness or energy. And my experience of being in Ukraine was not that the Ukrainians I was around were like evolved past red. It was that they have integrated in red. And there is this sense of like almost a mama bear protection quality of like, no, you know, like harsh, strict, clear, direct, simple, strong boundary setting, and with fierceness and like a no bullshit fierceness, a clarity fierceness. And that energy is it's power, you know, it's power. And to see how that can be integrated in and held with a more complex, kind of holistic, embodied, multidimensional consciousness that is able to meet each moment and show up in relationship with that, not moving past that or evolving beyond that in some sort of conceptual way, but actually allowing that power to live as part of ourselves. That was very moving for me when I was in Ukraine to see that. Vitas.
Yeah, I want to reflect a little bit on the shadow side, which was mentioned by many of you, and the aspect that everything has two sides, and we of course agree and deeply respect that. And one more very sad kind of shadow aspect of what we face is that some of our friends from the West, including from integral circles or especially European integral circles, have this kind of attitude that, okay, we are responsible for what is happening. I mean, we Westerners are responsible for what is happening because we did not show enough respect to Putin. We did not show enough compassion. We did not, whatever, you name it. And really having this, I don't know how to call it, this guilt and super responsibility, that's another shadow of green, I would say, and really kind of really try to understand the Russian soul and what do they really need and what are their needs, especially during this war, which is pissing us off. So of course you can, and maybe you should apply some compassion and probably some psychological or psychiatric inquiry into Putin's so-called soul after he's put in jail, kind of, but not before that. And you know, having this kind of shadow, facing this kind of shadow side is really painful. We had some serious debates and even battles with some of our integral friends, and that was so sad and disappointing to see this kind of denial.
I'm curious if, as this war progresses, are you hearing that the Russian people are losing faith in Putin at all?
Valery, would you like to reflect to that one?
Sorry, I'm trying to send another link to our chat. Can you please repeat the question, sir?
I'm wondering whether or not the Russian people are beginning to realize the absolute horror of what they're doing, and are they abandoning Putin's in their support? Because the media tells us they have a lot of supports. He has a lot of support within Russia. Is that true?
Well, thank you so much for this question. So how it looks in Russian society? First, there is a very, this is a social pyramid. This is a very hierarchical society. So on the top, there is a very small group of people who are real beneficiary of the war. So they simply earn a lot of money war purchases and so on. And indeed, steal money and corrupt schemes. Then there is a bigger group of people who would like to, how to say, who would like to make to stay far from any kind of war and politics and everything. So mostly in Moscow and St. Petersburg. So the idea of Putin's regime is to show to people in Moscow and St. Petersburg that the war is too far and their life is not threatened by that. So they earn the same money, they live in the same safety, more or less safe environment, and so on. And then there is a majority of something like 85% of people who could be split into 3 different groups. One group is mostly non-Russians. So this is a big group of people, of all those who we call them hidden nations. So nobody knows about these dozens of nations who are big enough, who are bigger than some European nations. Sorry to say that there are more Tatar people than Estonians, and there are more Bashkir people than people in Montenegro and so on. So there are big nations with 1,000-year history which were simply colonized. Colonized like one day British Empire colonized India or something like that. And people in Europe know a little bit more, having some resolutions of Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe and European Parliament about that. So these people are now waking up, and the small group within these people feel that there is now a good chance that that Moscow regime will weaken it, and they will get another chance to be free. But the major part of that non-Russian population is still sleeping. And then there is a social, let's say, sorry to say in the very root form, a social bottom, which is simply they live so badly that in their opinion, it's a good solution to get an enormous amount of money, which is equal to their 10 years, 15 years, 20 years salary, and transfer this money to their families and go and die in Ukraine. Dying in Ukraine for Russian soldiers is 100% insured. But they exchange their life to money for their families. And in absolute figures, this sounds like something like $20,000 US dollars, $40,000 US dollars. But in rural districts of Russia, this is so big figure. This is something like 10, 15, 20% salary in one payment, in one advance payment. And what is important, there is sociologists see something like 30-35% of population which simply don't care. So do they support war? Yes. Do they support peace? Yes. What they think Putin was right if he decided to continue the war? Yes, Putin is right. If to stop the war, yes, Putin is right. Whatever Putin says, it is correct, it is right, and they simply try to avoid any kind of thinking. This is a result of 20 years of pushing the population down through the spiral, down to the magical thinking. And it looks like we don't believe, we integralists don't believe that it is possible to push down tens of millions of people in few years. It is possible. We saw it. It was Hitler did this in Nazi Germany, and Putin did this in Russia, but much faster than Hitler because of television, because of social networks, because of internet, and many other things. So, do these people support the war? Yes, they support the war, but they support the war not because they are have huge militarists. They support the war because the government says that the war is good, the peace is bad. they always support government. This is a kind of magical thinking, and even people in Kursk region of Russia, which became a battlefield. You know that Ukrainian forces enter some territories of Russia with a strategic purpose to draw attention of Russian forces to make pressure on Ukrainian cities which are under attack less, to draw attentions and to draw some Russian forces from the Ukrainian front line. Even those people who are under shelling of their own government, so they live in Russian villages, being shot by Russian artillery and by Russian missiles, they simply understand nothing. And they think that, so they believe that Putin simply doesn't know about that. Nobody reports to him. And it is necessary just to find a person who could come to Putin and told that Russian villages are under fire from Russian forces. So this is, from integral point of view, this is a magical thinking where millions, dozens of millions of people are pushed down by 20 years of propaganda, of making people fools, of post-truth, of post-facts. There is a very nice book by British journalist Peter Pomerantsev, nothing is true and everything is possible. This is about Russian approach to create an environment of post-truth. So people in Russia support the war not because they are chauvinists and militarists. Indeed, there are some few, but simply because they have a magical thinking and don't understand who they are, where they are, and what to do. Sorry for being saying so much words, but it is necessary to show the whole picture.
Thank you, Valery. I just want to add one more point to what Valery so eloquently shared. There is this sense of greatness that Russian internal propaganda, the lower left, the kind of sense of belonging to something great. So what they're very good at, and by the way, Russian propaganda can be divided into two, like external for the whole world, mainly to the Western world, and internal. And they are overlapping, of course, but the internal propaganda is not less important. And what they're giving those people who are living in misery, if you look at the statistic, which part of Russian society lives in real misery, and I don't remember the proportion which part of people don't have water toilets. I mean, they have the toilets outside, just the hole in the ground, and they go there, and how many people don't have gas supply, and being one of the main kind of gas exporters, and so the people who live in misery, they are given this idea that they belong to something great, that the great Russia, the great, like, Russian, we are expanding, we are standing from our knees, kind of. So they're selling this lower level bullshit to the society, and people buy it because that's a very convenient defense mechanism, psychological defense mechanisms to survive in that misery. So that's just another aspect.
Vitas, what you're saying reminded me of when the Russian soldiers came into places like Bucha, wrote on the walls, "Who gave you permission to live like this?" Is a very powerful impact on me, and I wonder if you might just share that.
Exactly. Yeah, so the huge part of Russian military forces who physically entered Ukraine, they were not from Moscow, from St. Petersburg, or a couple of more biggest cities. Most of them were from province, and they were coming from really, really, really nasty living conditions. And when they entered suburbs of Kiev and saw houses and occupied houses and public spaces, and they saw how people live here, they got into that cultural shock, and there were numerous writings on the walls, and maybe Valery could add some more to this. And the most the most famous of them were like, who allowed you to live like that, kind of. So that was the sincere kind of pretension that what is happening here. They were shocked what they saw.
And there was one more thing that was extremely interesting, and we were trying to understand it. And only recently, finally, I read an article by a Russian anthropologist who explained this thing to me. They left excrements everywhere. You know, basically, they didn't use toilets in the places that they occupied. One of the schools in Hostomel, in the suburb of Kiev, it became their base in March 2022, and they were placed in the basement. And it's interesting that all the bathrooms were clean. But on the upper levels, on the tables where children study, on the stage of the school theater, it was full of excrements. So we were trying to understand what kind of phenomena is it. And I was even speaking to Gabor Mate, you probably know, the famous trauma teacher and therapist. And it was an interesting conversation, but I got the answers from different sources. The way Russian society have been growing its children is so disrupted. So basically this attachment disorder is so deep at the level of the whole culture that when there is this power dynamics that they can overpower someone, they regress to this anal stage, speaking the language of Jung and psychoanalysts. And this is not something new, because the research shows that this is the same thing that they have been doing when they occupied Berlin during the Second World War. So it appears that they just have been doing this, that this is part of the practice. They literally want to destroy civilization and civilize the world by many ways, including this one. And this is very subconscious, very deep. So I'm thinking about writing an article about it, and I'm looking for a journalist who could help bring the word about it in English to the Western world, because we also have some research and some books already that we found about this phenomenon, so that we could convey this message that it's not that Russia wants to only destroy the world order. It literally destroys civilization because of also the inner disruptions that are so deep within the society.
Yes, I'd like to jump in here and say thank you. I wish more people in our part of the world understand the condition that ordinary Russians live under. We have no idea. We've just heard parts of it. The conditions they live in that they think are normal, we would be appalling to most of us. I want to add another layer to emphasize, yes, the last three speakers, yes, yes, yes. And I'd like to add another layer on top of that, which is that Russia is destroying its own economy. Putin is destroying the Russian economy. The Russian economy is operating under very abnormal conditions. Putin is paying men extreme amounts of money to enlist so that their families can at least get the money. They know they'll die, but at least their families will be okay for a while. The economy is, I won't go into the economics. I'm sure there are people here who know more about economics than I do, but the Russian economy there's a limit to how long before their economic structures collapse and their technologies start collapsing. I mean, I wish we could support Ukraine more. But the Ukrainians, the Ukrainians are at the front line for all of us. Russia will destroy itself if Ukraine can just last a little bit longer. I wish we could support them more so that the Ukrainians could just, do what they need to do to end the war now. But Russia is self-destructing. Economically, technologically, That's how it will end on the Russian side unless someone assassinates Putin from the inside. So that's my layer. There's a whole layer of economics here, and I'll just stop saying anything more about it.
Just I'm sorry, I was going to write a comment, but that was really great or an interesting point for me to consider, Karen. And Russia self-destructing. And then in my mind, I jumped to the insight of what that might mean for paradigm shift, and that they do represent the blue level of development, which also is the unfolding of the blue level of development in history. And so there is, and it feels to me, I think maybe people can see this too, other people, but that there's like a last bastion hold that old paradigm is digging in and waging a battle everywhere. So it's interesting to maybe consider about the self-destruction that is coming as a part of that, and also to know that that's a system that, while it may always be a part of our individual level of development, but historically it's also one that will shift out of our present.
Yes, Marie has seen my chart. I'm a historian. Marie has seen my chart. This is the last gasp of empire. For 5,000 years in human history, empire, blue backed by red, was the way the most advanced parts of the world ran. We have seen in our last 400 years of history, since modernity came online, and then with World Wars I and II, the old great landed multi-ethnic empires collapsed one by one in the wake of World War I. Russia and China being the great examples, they are the way the world ran for 5,000 years, multi-ethnic landed empires, solid blue. And this is Piaget's concrete operational thinking, right? Mm-hmm. There's good and evil. You know what's right, you know what's wrong. It's very binary. There's you run by dogma, whether it's Christianity or Marxism or whatever your dogma is. And if you're not saved, you're going to hell. They cannot, at that stage of cognitive development, you cannot imagine that any shift from your paradigm is an advance. If you shift from the paradigm you know to be your true dogma, everything goes to hell. This is and this is where the cognitive stages come in very strongly. So what we're seeing here, and then in the wake of World War II, the modern era colonial overseas empires collapsed. What we're seeing now with each go round, we've been around this mulberry bush a number of times, democracy versus authoritarianism. This is the last gasp of empire. Russia and China, and they've got a few, Iran and so on. The old 5,000 years of empire. This is how these people know they're doing what they know. Now, there's also, at this point, they're run by narcissists and sociopaths, which shows how deficient they are. But if we can just survive this and build anew, I am so encouraged by seeing the creativity that is arising. And I was in Katerina's breakout group. I didn't get a chance to express it then, but the creativity that is arising within Ukraine in response to this. This is a breakdown of an awful lot, but it is also a breakthrough. And it's horrible. It's horrible to experience these enormities. It's horrible to witness them. But this is a breakdown of an old world order that is on its way out. They're like 3 stages, these China and Russia, 3 stages behind the cutting edge of history, and evolution happens. I could say a lot about that, but I think I'll stop here.
Just before Eloy and Ak move in, I could use for myself this, a breath and holding the vastness of these epochs and the centuries of all that is unfolding right now in this present moment with the intimacy of our body and our breath. And I'm just inviting all of us to hold that together for a moment. Over to you, Ak.
Yeah, thanks, Karen, for that historic perspective. I know a bit of the history of Ukraine and Russia, but in no way I'm a specialist on that. But one of the things that I've noticed in meeting both Ukrainians and Russians, because I do work with some Russians in integral community there, trying to to push something, I could say, is the apathy within Russian. And to me, it's like, even the more complex thinking Russians, there's this thing of being apolitical or being disassociated with what's happening in the country because it's a survival mechanism. And then on the other side, I see the Ukrainians, and I just think about, the Kazakhs running over the plains, fighting away their rulers when they become too suppressive, right? And so there's such a difference in mentality that I notice between the two countries, and I think that apathy in Russia and of course there's also a lot of fear, but I think that's a very limiting factor at the moment for any movement within Russia to rise up and to do something about it, because there are Russians that want things different. But they're just too damn scared.
I wanted to ask a question about being resourced. So, and in Ukraine, and then for us Americans too. I know there's a lot of stuff in the chat and links and stuff of things we can do, but when I think of resource, I think of being resourced in terms of getting the physical supplies you need and stuff like that, the food, the weapons, keeping infrastructure alive, all that kind of stuff, but also some of the stuff that Victoria talked about being emotionally resourced. And anyway, I want to hear about what's going on there with resources, and also any other suggestions for how we can help you and help us be more resourced.
I'll take that from a general point of view. So I started this because I knew Ukrainians were walking through hell. I went to my first rally. I didn't know I could help, but I didn't know I could save lives and bring victory sooner. Well, that's exactly what I'm doing. And there are 100 nonprofits across the United States, if not 1,000, and every one of them needs every bit of your skills. They need marketing, they need technology, they need all kinds of things, social media skills to raise funds and raise awareness. And I want to end it with, like, one of the stupider things I do, because I don't know the language, is I drive to Temecula and pick up something that needs to go to Ukraine, and I drop it off with a volunteer who's leaving from LAX. So I don't have any particular skills. I have conviction of purpose, and I just take action and make things happen to get stuff to Ukraine sooner. So I'm not bragging. I'm just saying that's an example. You don't need any skills. There's a lot of material movement, event planning going on, social media going on, and this is happening across the country and the world, to be honest, the free world.
Maria?
Okay, sorry, thanks. I wanted to leave space for anybody else to respond to that question. So my question to the panelists is, I'd love to hear some of how you're processing Zelensky's leadership. Thank you.
So since
If
I have my
may.
question raised, Valery, I will just drop a few words, and I really wanted to respond to that previous question about response, and maybe then I will pass the ball to you if you're okay on Zelensky. So very quickly, yes, we need a lot of material and financial support. Unfortunately, most of that is going in really big numbers, in tens of millions and billions, because what Ukraine really needs is the safe sky, kind of to closed sky, which needs a lot of air defense and missile defense, which you can imagine costs really big money. So that's why the American support is so critical, because no other country can afford that. And for the American budgets, it's still really relatively small numbers. And what's very also important to understand that the West is doing a very little part of what is possible. And this is another sad truth which we need to admit. And that is that's the problem of political leadership and political indecisiveness and even cowardice. For example, a lot of Russian missiles could be destroyed from neighboring NATO countries such as Poland, Romania, and others. And what needs to be done, just political will, kind of to open up for that. And there are so many more technical and intellectual and financial possibilities, but what we are lacking is political courage and will. So I'll stop here, and Valery, please respond to the Zelensky question.
To respond to both briefly about Zelensky. Majority of people in Ukraine are skeptical about Zelensky because they are skeptical about any political leaders, because the country was stateless for centuries, and people don't trust in the state, don't trust to political leaders, they trust mostly to their own networks and volunteers and so on. So no one of Ukrainian political leaders enjoy high support and trust longer than a few months after his or her inauguration. So that is why nobody could rule Ukraine as a king, because this is a country with a different social structure. And for us, Zelensky is rather a symbol of national resistance than an efficient political leader. Whom people trust in Ukraine, people don't trust any political leader, any government official, any government structure. People trust to armed forces, people trust to volunteer. This is a very specific term which unites several groups and movement and different kinds of movement. But we have no time to go deeply into that. This would be described in one of the articles which will be published soon. And people believe in churches in a very multi-confessional, multi-religious, multicultural country. They are very different. So there are Catholics, there are Orthodox, Protestant, Muslims, Jews, whatever. And so for us, Zelensky is rather a symbol of resistance than a real efficient political leader. Then briefly, I would like to, I already highlighted that in our breakout room, but there were rather small, few people there. So I would like to repeat here. So Ukraine is under attack by missiles, which consist of American chips and are paid on European money right now. So indeed, Ukraine needs more weapon and more money. But the major thing that Ukraine needs is not weapon and not money. It's Western acknowledgement that Russia should be defeated. There is no acknowledgement that Russia should be defeated. There is no okay for Russia to be defeated, and that means that Europe continues to buy Russian oil and gas, and America continues to sell American chips and technologies to Russia. And so that means that Russia sell oil and gas to Europe and take this money to buy American chips and to produce missiles to kill our competitors, to kill civilian people in Ukrainian cities around me. This is the process that should be stopped. Missiles which are now shoot to the missiles which have been shot several days ago, they consist of American chips which were sold just weeks ago. So this process, the process of Europe financing Russian war with European money and supporting Russian military with American chips, is going right now. We should stop these two processes to stop the war. And this is the major problem, not money, not weapon to Ukraine, not supporting Ukraine, but simply stopping providing Russian regime with money and selling to Russian regime military technologies and products. This is possible because Europe can survive without oil and gas. Some prices will go up indeed. And this is possible also concerning chips, because intelligence and financial monitoring authorities around the world, especially in the United States, they know how to do this because they already did this once when America fought Al-Qaeda and other international terrorist organizations. So this is the problem. So financing the war by Ukrainian money and supporting Russian army with modern chips and technologies from America right now. Thank you.
We're going to take one more comment from Victoria and then probably wind down the call. It's getting late for our friends in Europe, but it seems like there's a ton of energy, so potentially there could even be a follow-up call. And if anybody has ideas or suggestions for what future relationship building with our Ukrainian brothers and sisters, please reach out to me personally or anyone on the San Diego Integral team. Victoria.
Yeah, I want to add my part about emotional resources that Ilo mentioned. And I also want to stress out again what Yulia said in the beginning of the call about urgency. Urgency is in many ways showing up because we are really tired and exhausted. I know that I'm saying this from call to call, but this is true because in the first year we were like on adrenaline, on hope, and there was a lot of hope, and then we got really disappointed after the first year. There was this there were emotional swings, and now like what I sense from the field, from the collective, we're holding on our last resources, emotional, physical, and everything. So there's no more time to talk in theories or create discussion clubs, you know, like, well, I'm not a global analyst and expert. I just sense what I can from the field and from my body, and that's what I can express. So helping, the best way to help to attend to our emotional resource is to end the war. It's like the best way. And Valeria already said how it needs to be done. Any other support is welcomed, and we're very grateful for it, but it's like putting a band-aid, you know, or really heavy bleeding. So we need this war to end, and we welcome any help. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, everybody. That's a beautiful place to end. And yeah, inviting in that like remaining intimate with urgency as an expression of love. That's my invitation to to end this call with. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you to all of our Ukrainian friends. Thank you, Ak. Appreciating you all, loving you all.
And thank you for organizing this, Tucker. And this was beautiful. Amazing discussion. People were really engaged here, and our hearts go out to you. And hopefully our help goes out to you as well.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
For further information, including upcoming events, resources, links to our Facebook and Meetup pages, and our fabulous donate button, please visit our website at sandiegointegral.org. Donations are greatly appreciated and help us to continue to provide information and connection within the Integral community.